Hello there. I was just wondering if I could hire a boat, please.
Say what?
A boat. I'm really hoping I could hire a boat. I really need one. Very, 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 very quickly.
Wait. Hang on. Are you Barry Gibb?
No.
Are you Barry Gibb? I think you're Barry Gibb. I think you're trying to steal my boat.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yes, I'm Barry Gibb, and I want to steal your boat. Yes, and I want to.
I don't like Barry Gibb.
Oh no!
I think he keeps skulls as pets. I think he puts little wigs on them, and he sticks them on top of potatoes, and he calls them his children. And then
I have to stop you. I have to stop you here because it's really quite urgent that I have this boat. So, how much do you want for the boat?
Wait a minute. You're all dripping. What's
yes.
that? What's dripping? What's that?
It's certainly not my ex-wife. Just look. All I need is the boat. So,
I don't have any
name
boats.
a price and I'll have it.
Well, I've got a kayak.
That'll do.
Wait a minute. Have you ever touched Celia Imrie?
No.
Have you ever touched her? I have. I touched her once. She didn't even give me permission or anything.
That sounds fascinating.
I just went up to her and I said, "Oh, it's Celia." Well, I didn't even say that, actually. I just went up to her and I touched her.
That's brilliant.
Right in the cleft. Right in the cleft it was.
I tell you what. What's your name?
Barry Gibb.
You're Barry Gibb.
Yeah. I'm the other Barry Gibb. That's why I don't like him, because my name's also Barry.
Well, same here. I'm Barry Gibb as well, but
we can't both be Barry Gibb. We can't both be Barry Gibb unless I've gone through some sort of time portal and I'm not wearing my special hat. You've got to be somebody else, otherwise I'm not giving you a boat. Also, you're dripping all over the floor of my shop. I'm going to have to mop it up, and I don't have a mop, so I'm going to have to use my own hair.
That comb over, I'm sure, would certainly mop up a lot of whatever it is.
It's not very absorbent.
My ex-wife.
It's not very absorbent.
Sure fine.
It hasn't been in 20 years. Not since.
Just stop talking, you madman! Look, it's really urgent that I have some sort of floating device that gets me out to sea. So, what I'm going to do is this. I'm not Barry Gibb. You're Barry Gibb. I'll be Robin Gibb. There you go. I'm Robin Gibb, but I'm not that Robin Gibb. I'm just like you with your issues with Barry Gibb. You see? So, what we're going to do, now we're friends, you know me, surely you would help out a friend with your kayak.
Will you give me a puppy?
Yes, I'll give you anything you want.
I'd like a puppy.
I'd like a puppy. Sepulchre right now.
In fact, I'd like a puppy and a parakeet and a little rabbit and a gerbil, and I'd like them all in a cage, and I'd like to see who fights and wins and dies, and I'd like to see it.
Now?
Yes, we're friends now. Yes, you can have my boat.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
It's got a hole in it. It's got a hole in it. When I go out in it to get the groceries, I have to stick my old chap in the hole, plug it up.
I can hear sirens, Barry.
It's quite a nice sensation.
I'm about to get picked up, aren't I?
Like picked up like a giant picks you up, puts you on his back and takes you to a pleasant land full of cake.
Barry, those sirens are getting louder, aren't they?
Have you got my bunny? Give me my bunny and you can have my fucking boat. If you don't have my bunny, just make a bunny shadow puppet with your fingers. Hurry up, I just want to see a bunny rabbit. Excites me.
Right. I'm off. If anybody comes in, just tell them that I wasn't here. Bye!
Told you I fucking hate Barry Gibb. He's always doing that. He's always coming in, saying he's going to give me a bunny, and then never gives me a bunny. Fucking Barry Gibb. Him and the fucking Bee Gees can fuck off.
And that was My Life and Times by Eric Plimsoll.
And now on Radio Flange Goblet, the show that's not unlike being sprayed without your permission by the refuse seals create while wearing your favourite sweater or kilt, the After Movie Diner, which this week comes from the Lech Wałęsa Memorial Sandwich Emporium in Tunbridge Wells, where they've run entirely out of pickles and the ham looks like they've used it to wipe down an old homeless man who may have lost his way in the middle of trying to find a bathroom, or an exceptionally cheap whore. Very, very good at that. You are exceptionally good at that. Superb. No spillage or anything. Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the After Movie Diner. Happy, happy, joy, joy, all you diners and dinerettes. Welcome. And what an absolutely jam-packed episode we have for you. Before we get to our fantastic interview and indeed our incredible film discussion, there is a couple of bits of business I want to talk about with you first. The enormous news this week is that the Second Unit Podcast Network is now the Second Unit Broadcast Network. We now have a website online where we will be streaming live shows every night of the week, or most nights of the week anyway. Obviously, the Second Unit Podcast Network is myself and Mo Porn over at Drunk on VHS. We came from the Basement Guys, Dr. Action the Kick-Ass Kid, Blood Bars and Boomsticks, and so on. We've got a few podcasts who have been part of our little collective for the last few years, and now we have joined forces with Lewis Kugel from Traumatic Cinematic, and we are going live, baby. That's correct, over at secondunitbroadcast.com. And we're starting tonight. That's the night this show goes out, which is Wednesday, June the 11th at 8 p.m. And we are going to be kicking it off for a whole evening of live broadcasting, either hosted by or picked by Mo Porn and myself. Yes, that's correct. Every single Wednesday night is mine and Mo Porn's evening. We do the shows, we pick the lineup, we do the music, we do everything. So Wednesday nights, you want to be at home, you want to be over at secondunitbroadcast.com, and you want to be checking out our live shows. Our lineup is absolutely fantastic. Tonight, for example, we kick off at 8 p.m. with Matt from Direct to Video Connoisseur. He's going to be talking to Jamie about an asylum film, I believe. And then at 9 to 10 p.m., Mo and I will be hosting our regular Drunk on VHS. Now, anyone who's been following us on Facebook recently knows that we were doing the show over at the FDTC network. It's going to be exactly the same kind of show, the 9 to 10 p.m. Drunk on VHS show with Mo hosting and me co-hosting. That's going to be exactly the same, but it's now going to be on the Second Unit Broadcast Network. Then at 10 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., I'm going to be DJing some live music under the I Don't Have Mummy Issues show. I have music. And then at 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m., Mo and fitness guru Varsity McGaffin are going to be wrestling. Yes, they're going to be doing a wrestling show all about your favorite wrestlers, I guess. And then at 11 p.m., it's my brand new show. This is a show I've never done before, and I'm kind of nervous, kind of excited about it. Crosstalk, which has a Facebook page, which you can find over at www.facebook.com/John Cross Talk Show. And yes, we are going to be doing an hour's worth of a kind of variety interview music comedy show, kind of like The Late Show with David Letterman, but with me and weirder kind of thing. And tonight's guest is Doug Tilley, so please do tune into that. All the information is over at facebook.com/John Cross Talk Show, or indeed just on my regular Facebook page. I think I put it up in the After Movie Diner and Dr. Action and Kick-Ass Kid group as well. So the information is all over the place. If not, you can email me at either aftermoviediner@gmail.com or johncrosstalkshow@gmail.com and ask me where you can find stuff and what you need and all the rest of it before the shows kick off tonight. So every single Wednesday, make sure you're in front of your computer, kicking back and enjoying yourself and listening to Mo and I's Night over at secondunitbroadcast.com.
Not getting the coverage of TV horror from the other podcasts out there? Then look no further than Evil Episodes Podcast, where we'll give you the in-depth coverage of all the best and the worst that the small screen has to offer.
Oh my God, you're hearing just about the big screen? Listen to the small screen here on Evil Episodes. Mike, Corey, and Jamie. Man, we're going to make things weird for you and just bring to you everything that you don't hear about that you should be watching on TV.
Jamie, give us some examples.
Well, how about we talk about new stuff like American Horror Story or The Walking Dead, or this season's Sleepy Hollow. But then, not only that, we dig into old stuff like Tales from the Dark Side and Supernatural.
Holy moly.
That sounds like a fun fucking podcast to me.
You bet your sweet ass it does.
And Jamie, where's the only podcast where they can hear about all that stuff?
Well, it's Evil Episodes, of course.
That's right, so set your DVR to channel 666 and let Evil Episodes give you the in-depth coverage of the stuff that deserves to be but isn't talked about elsewhere. Evil Episodes is a proud member of the Whole Thea Podcasting Network.
And the other big news this week is that I have taken every single song, some of the jingles, some rarities, some cover versions, a whole bunch of stuff that has appeared on the Diner over the last few years, and I've put it all up available for purchase, for download, for listening to, and other things up on dinersditties.bandcamp.com. That's diners, as in people who eat in diners, D-I-N-E-R-S, ditties, as in like titties, but with a D, D-I-T-T-I-E-S, .bandcamp.com. And yes, there are 3 albums there available for purchase. The Diner Jukebox, another Diner Jukebox, and yet another Diner Jukebox. And it's $25 for all 3 albums, and there are various other prices. You can also buy just single tracks if you want, or multiple single tracks, or whatever it is you want. Go hog wild. I would please, please, please beg and urge everyone who listens to the show to at least go download at least one track, if not a handful of tracks, if not an album, and give generously to the Diner, because at the moment I am out at work. I do have a lot of expenses, both doing the show and in general just living, and it would really, really, really be a wonderful way after 126 shows to show your support, just to go buy an album or buy some tracks off the album. I'll let you know, for example, that the first album, which is $10, it has 30 tracks on it, so it's a ridiculous amount of music you're getting for that $10. It's not just $1 a track. It's you get 30 tracks for that, and I promise you they are all good, fun, well-produced tracks, I like to think, anyway. So I'm not trying to con anyone or swindle anyone or give someone nothing for something kind of thing. You are going to get a huge amount of songs and hopefully a huge amount of fun out of also supporting the Diner. So please go to dinersditties.bandcamp.com. Also, links are available on our website. And please do help out the show as much as humanly possible. It would really, really, really do me a huge favor, and also let me know that you guys want to keep hearing the show week in, week out. So thanks ever so much for that. Sorry again to try and hit you guys up for money. Even if you don't, I still love you, and thank you very much for listening. And I will keep doing the podcast as long as I possibly can.
Movies need only 3 things: badasses.
You tell me who you want done, and I'll do the hell out of it.
A chick with drive who don't take no jive.
Boobs.
Do you know that the female breast, known to be the source of life since Eve, can be deadly weapons?
And body counts.
Body count. The mathematics of murder and menace.
The BB&BC podcast discusses lesser-known action, exploitation, and horror cult cinema. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher Smart Radio, and SoundCloud by searching for BB&BC Podcast. You can also listen to each episode directly on the show's website at badassesboobsandbodycounts.com.
Got the goddamn message? Let's go to work.
All right, well, now here comes the entertainment. Enough of my babbling. Yes, we are going to now present to you an interview with the fantastic filmmakers behind the movie Mortal Remains. Here it goes. to the After Movie Diner. Thanks very much for being on the show. We have with us today the filmmakers behind the new horror movie Mortal Remains, which is a really creepy flick, fellas. I really enjoyed it. I just watched it today, and good creepy mystery kind of. It's not quite found footage, is it? But it's sort of part documentary, part found footage. Creepy. It's very good. Anyway, really enjoyed it, guys. The two filmmakers behind the movie Mortal Remains, Christian Stavrakis and Michael Ricche, and it's wonderful to have you guys on the show. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And you came to me via the guys over at Profondo Cinema. So how do you know those guys?
We did some time together a few years back in Georgia. Yeah,
Nice.
No, I've been friends with those guys for years because we're all big George Romero geeks.
Right.
And,
Okay. Yeah.
Mark and I went to high school together, so it was a pleasure to get all my disparate friends in one virtual room together and just chat about the horror movies that we all love.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. And obviously there is a bit of your guys' backstory in the movie. You know, making films at a young age and sort of doing little video shorts and things like that. I take that to be accurate?
Yeah, that was all.
Oh, yes.
All there. Yeah. Yep. That all took place. That is all authentic material. We didn't recreate anything. Nor would we be able to because we obviously looked so different, so much younger. But
sure.
Yep. All. And it was all sort of stuff that we had filmed and always hoped someday that it would be useful, and it turned out to be extremely useful in this particular circumstance. So.
Yeah, nice. Very cool, very cool. And so why don't you give people just a little bit of a lowdown of what the movie's about and sort of the mystery contained within, and we'll go from there.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. Mortal Remains is what we're calling a shockumentary. It's part documentary, part found footage, as you said, and it hinges upon the legend of a mysterious filmmaker named Carl Atticus, who made two movies back in the 60s and early 70s, two horror movies that were extremely horrific, extremely violent, and whenever this guy made a movie or whenever one of his movies was screened, some terrible things always seemed to happen, either to the audience or because of the audience, becoming violent. And he himself turned up dead, a couple years later. At least that's what seems to have happened. And we Mark and I, are a couple of boobs going out to find out what happened to Carl Atticus and why no one wants to talk about this guy. And hopefully it's an intriguing story, a compelling story. It seems to work for people that have watched the film and enjoy it.
Yeah, I like the kind of mystery of it. I like the true crime aspect of it, and I like the way that it seemed to harken back to. I mean, I used to love reading all those like true crime newspapers and magazines when I was a kid. Anyway, kind of gothic, I guess, in some regards, or morbid. But I also like when VHS was sort of first in or around. There was that. Certainly about those movies like Cannibal Holocaust and Last House on the Left and, certain movies like that, there was kind of a mythos around them. And in fact, now that they're all available online and they're all available on DVD and Blu-ray, they've somewhat lost their sheen a little bit. But there was a certain... When you found like an unmarked VHS that had something just really sick and twisted on it, there was a certain thrill to that. And this movie certainly plays into that. Is that what you guys were going for?
Absolutely, that was exactly the vibe we were going for. Were you living in the States back then, John?
No, I was living in England, so we had it even worse because we had the video nasties and what
the video nasties, yeah.
And what that meant was that movies that were just fairly average took on even more kind of epically demonic qualities because they'd been chastised and
officially banned, right? Yeah, movies that you would never have heard of if they hadn't made this list, So
right.
it's like, wow, I've got to see that,
Of course, and then you find out it was made in somebody's basement for 50 pence.
Yeah.
It really wasn't a very good movie, and you wonder what all the fuss was about.
It's just as you said, too, that we've talked about this before, is that now that these movies are available in pristine, high-definition, remastered, it's, if you watch Zombie, or as you would have known it, Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Yeah.
on Blu-ray and remastered high definition, it loses something. It's got to look like shit. It's got to be a really grainy, really bad, beaten up 35 millimeter grindhouse print, or some 6th generation video, and it's that much creepier when it is.
Yeah,
because
completely.
It's sort of a dubious origin,
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing A Clockwork Orange, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Evil Dead, the uncut version, all of them on bootleg VHS before there was Anchor Bay, and obviously before Kubrick died and they released Clockwork Orange. And all of those movies had just a really perplexing, mind-twisting kind of vibe to them when, like you say, they were on grainy, crappy VHS. In fact, when they cleaned Evil Dead up, you could see all the effects. You could see all the line around the map painting of the moon and all that, and it kind of spoiled something.
yeah, it's almost too good now.
But yeah, sorry, yes, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, did you guys have Faces of Death overseas back in the day?
Oh yeah,
God.
No, we had that. We had that. Yeah, we had that, and we had. In fact, that was. I remember that being re-released on DVD when that was unbanned as well. But yeah, we had Face of Death. There was like 3 or 4 of those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a bunch of those. I mean, we had all of them eventually, but there was one company called Vipco that used to release really crappy VHS versions of all those movies. Driller Killer and The Nostril Picker and just some really terrible films. And they used to release them as like never before released in England, but they were all cut versions and they were all really terrible versions. They were like the Mill Creek of their day, I guess. But yeah, no, the re-release ones came out much later. And it's a shame that some of those movies, the VHS and even the video nasties, have never been re-released and have never been kind of found again. There's a whole swathe of them that hasn't. And again, I feel like Mortal Remains is kind of a homage to that as well.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. From the get-go, Chris and I were trying to figure out how to sort of make the film we always wanted to see again. We're a product of the 80s, back when VHS was king, and we missed that. I have a collection of VHS. I have over 3,500 VHS tapes, and I have a high definition TV, and I still insist on watching all of my favorites, films. I'm a sci-fi buff, so I refuse to watch Star Wars on DVD,
right?
Because it almost looks 3D to me.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the way I view films even now. And so when Chris and I sort of sat down, and I spent the majority of my time in the editing room and telling Chris it looks too good, we need to really muck this up. I mean, it's got to have a real good VHS grainy vibe to it. And so hopefully we've acquired that. And when we show it at screenings, oftentimes we're requested to bring the Blu-ray version, which I personally don't like because I think it's too crisp and clear, although some of the fans love it,
right,
because that's what they're used to seeing now. So.
Sure, no, of course, and so it's got a big cast. And where did you kind of pick those guys up from? Are most of them guys you know, or are there some people you got in there because you've always wanted to put them in film, or?
A combination of both. There were certain people did cameos out of the goodness of their hearts. I live in Pittsburgh. We shot about 98% of the movie here in Pittsburgh, actually, although it is set elsewhere.
Yeah, I noticed John Amplas was in the film.
John Amplas makes a cameo, although exactly where we can't say because, of course, that would spoil the surprise. But he's in there.
Of course.
And there are a couple of other Romero alumni lurking there, or at least their voices are.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people, a lot of the talking heads are people that I used to work with at this particular bookstore here in town, and other people that I met either through the bookstore or just that I knew socially. But, in casting the movie, I wasn't casting actors. I was casting people who I knew would respond a certain way. If we gave them information about a subject, I knew how they would be able to deliver it. And so that's how I went about casting the film.
Yeah, and they also had really, you did very well at like picking out the authentic looks of people. So professors and looked like professors, and the crew guys looked like crew guys, and detectives or policemen looked like those guys. Like they all looked authentic, which was great about the film. So one of the questions I asked, because I guessed it was made around Pittsburgh and that kind of area. Was there any reason that you guys were interested in a filmmaker from Baltimore?
No, I mean, Chris and I both. I grew up in Maryland. I've always been a Marylander. Chris actually lived in Pittsburgh for a little while and then moved to Maryland, where he came here for elementary, middle, and high school, which is kind of how we connected.
Sure.
During our high school years. And if you're from Maryland, you have more than likely heard of the myth of Carl Atticus.
Right.
The Baltimore filmmaker, had a film that everybody's familiar with, the Patterson Theater riot, which apparently was a riot that occurred after the screening of his second film, Mortal Remains, which was then subsequently lost, and which is why we sort of engaged in this particular film, sort of on the hunt for Mortal Remains, this sort of holy grail of horror films. What happened to that film? If there was a riot and the film was, apparently destroyed or stolen, who has it? Where did it end up? And so we're kind of trying to verify this myth. Is it the truth or isn't it? And that's what our film sort of centers on. But if you're from Maryland, you've more than likely you've heard of him. If you're outside of Maryland, more than likely you haven't.
Yeah. And even if you've never heard of Atticus himself, chances are you've probably heard the urban legend about the movie that drove its audience crazy. There's already been a couple of variations on that in print and on film.
Sure. Definitely.
We went searching to see if we could find the origin of that story, of that myth. And, we seem to have come kind of close. I don't know. Anyway, it seems like an effective variation on that theme.
No, I was also asking because I've covered I know a lot of people in the Baltimore indie movie scene, and I've actually covered a lot of films from that area and seen a lot of films from that area dating back to, my big thing is Dondola and Alien Factor and films like that.
Wow, I remember them.
Yeah, but, and obviously John Waters, who you see in the film or mention in the film or is in the film. So, yes, those kind of movie makers. But I know Atticus had not...
had never come up, probably.
Never come up, no. And, I've spoken to, George Stover, who is, the king of sort of Baltimore movies and has worked for... almost every Baltimore filmmaker there is, and he never mentioned him. So I'll have to ask George next time I speak to him all about it.
Yeah, ask him. Odds are, if anyone has heard of him, they'll either say, I don't want to talk about that guy, or they'll say, I've never heard of him. Right. That was kind of the response that we got from a lot of people, was they either slam the door in our face or spit and walk away, or it's kind of like that famous Scottish play by Shakespeare. Nobody wants to say the name.
Sure, of course.
I think one guy says it in the movie, when you mention Carl Atticus, bad things start happening.
Yeah,
and of course once you see the movie, you see what kind of stuff happens when you bring up the name.
Yeah, of course. Well, I was nervous about having you guys on the show just from the content of the film. I didn't,
Yeah.
But anyway, what was that?
I would also like to mention, John, that a lot of people try to sort of brush this under the carpet. And that's one of the Ed Sanchez, who's the director of the Blair Witch Project, who is is a great mentor and friend to us, and who was in the film also.
Yeah.
Was hesitant to discuss it, but said he'd be willing to go ahead and help us out and sort of talk on camera. But a lot of folks sort of want to brush him under the carpet, and the big question is, why do some of the larger names in the industry do that? Is it possible that people were sort of maybe ripping this guy off? Because a lot of people consider Carl sort of the godfather of the slasher film era, which didn't kind of give birth until, almost 1974, what with Texas Chainsaw and so forth, really took hold in the industry. And so another reason why perhaps folks are, and another reason why we investigated even deeper to find out whether or not there was some sort of evil legacy to this man that folks not only didn't want to talk about him, but perhaps didn't want to talk about him.
Yeah, there was a mysterious phone call where somebody said, there's a good reason he's dead. You leave it alone. You don't want to know about this guy. And that's that made us want to research it even further.
Sure, no, of course. No, it's really compelling, and I think that there's something to do with, America in particular, the kind of, because you don't really have that Gothic thing. You have Southern Gothic, but that your history is kind of splattered with the serial killer mythos and the sort of true crime kind of, the serial killers and stuff like that. And there's a certain weird kind of romantic mystery to it in some weird way. And that comes across, I think.
Yeah, you've definitely hit it on the head there. that was one of the things we really wanted to explore. Was in fact, during the making of the film, we were exploring this really strange, gruesome legend, and all the while, I kept getting these, seeing on the Yahoo News or whatever. I would send Mark these headlines, a crazed man eats the face off another man in Florida, right. Or some guy beheads a stranger on a bus. You think, what? This is much more horrible than anything we could come up with.
Yeah, no,
and this is happening in real life, just around the world. But for some reason, when you're seeing a movie, and that little phrase based on a true story, that little hint of verisimilitude just makes it that much more intriguing, because you're watching, and again, the grainier, the crummier the film looks, you think, could this be real? Are we really watching some horrible thing that we shouldn't be seeing here? And that's so compelling. Like you said, when you go into it knowing it's completely fictitious, then it loses something. And you're right, this country does have a sort of an affinity for that sort of sleazy exploitative angle. But yeah, we always make heroes out of these monsters, these serial killers.
Yeah,
and I wonder why that is. And that's one of the themes we tried to explore.
Well, yeah, because I think in England we have them, but they're all from like the Victorian era. Obviously Jack the Ripper's the most famous one, but all the people who like poison their family and stuff like that, they were all kind of smoky streets of London, top hats and capes and all that kind of stuff. Whereas,
except for Dennis Nilsson,
right? There are a couple. There's like the Yorkshire Ripper and some others. Yeah. But ultimately, the contemporary ones are not as interesting, and you tend to then look across the water to America for all the sort of contemporary mysteries to some extent. Right. And this played into that. So how did you, obviously you mentioned Ed Sanchez, who's in the movie, who helped or directed Blair Witch, but obviously helped you guys get set up. How did you put the movie together to begin with? Like in terms of funding, where the idea came from, things like that?
I wrote it originally as a documentary. I wrote it front to back as a documentary about this character, this figure, Carl Atticus. And I wrote it back in 2003, 2004. And I can't remember if I actually finished it in 04 or 05, because that takes me a long time to write.
Yeah.
But, I did write the whole thing as a documentary, and then sat on it for a long time because nobody seemed particularly interested in it. And then many years later, I think it was around 2009 or 10, Mark has a friend who works in acquisitions at Sony Pictures. And Mark was, in California visiting, and he was pitching this guy some ideas he'd had. And the guy said, no, it's not really interesting. What else you got? And then, Mark, you can tell this part better than I can.
Well, I was out. We were having breakfast very early in the morning before our sort of the day began. And again, as Chris said, he was sort of poo-pooing all of my original ideas that I came with. And he says, what's really hot right now, Mark, are horror films, and Paranormal Activity had just come out. It was making Paramount, millions of dollars hand over foot. And he said, do you have anything along those lines? And I said, well, I don't, but a good buddy of mine has a great script that I just absolutely love. And he says, well, pitch it to me. And I gave probably the worst Hollywood pitch ever. And he was hooked. He loved it. And then the next thing I knew, I was calling Chris. It was probably 6 a.m. back in Pittsburgh. And I said, get your script together and go over it and dust it off. Get it ready. We're sending it to Sony Pictures. And so while Chris was getting the script in shape, because he hadn't really looked at it probably in a year or two, I put together a proof of concept DVD using clips from other horror films. And we sent that over. And Sony looked at the script. They really, really liked it. They gave us a lot of pointers, including the found footage component. They said, unfortunately, what you have is a documentary by nature, and what you need is something that has more of a through line, something that sort of connects all the dots in a more cinematic fashion. And so we thought, well, we can go the found footage route. I mean, after all, much of what our film is in some ways, shape, and form, it's a tribute to the original version of the Blair Witch Project.
Right.
Which, of course, was actually, before it was purchased by Artisan, was a mix of both documentary and found footage elements. And so, they loved the proof of concept. I think it made its way to the VP of acquisitions, who said, I don't even know who this Carl Atticus guy is, unfortunately, they weren't interested in investing. What Hollywood wants now is you to bring them a finished film, and then they buy it outright, and they buy all the rights to it, and they sort of own it thereafter. And so we had to fund it ourselves. I ended up, pulling the cash from stocks and a variety of other sources, and without having any other sort of films to our name. We had a bunch of shorts, but we had never entered any film festivals. I mean, Chris and I were sort of destitute when it came to having any sort of credits to speak of in order to entice any investors. So we love film, and we've been filmmakers all of our lives, but we never had anything to show for it, unfortunately. And so we said, well, then hell, we'll just make this ourselves. And our mentor over at Sony kept saying, you can do it. And Steve, Ed Sanchez also was very, you guys can do this. Trust me, I did Blair Witch on a micro budget, and you guys can pull this off. And
that was kind of the light bulb that went off, too, is that Mark and I looked at each other and said, I think we mentioned it in the movie. We said, how come these guys made this blockbuster and we always thought we'd be the ones to make it big, I think is what we say in the movie. Yeah. And, of course, that's the true story, is that we looked at each other and said, we've never actually finished a movie. Let's go make the damn thing, and then maybe something will happen.
Sure.
So hopefully something will happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, no, and I have to say that I don't want to give too much away for people listening, but there are things that you do with the found footage when you've got the handheld camera and so on that in terms of scares and in terms of kind of creep factor that are very, very nicely done, nicely subtle. Nothing is kind of hit home too much to begin with, you know what I mean? And
thank you.
I really did enjoy that. I mean, the elements I'm talking about. I thought that was very well done.
No, I appreciate hearing that too, because we were very careful. We realized we had a kind of a chore ahead of us trying to graft these two genres together. The documentary I could do in my sleep, because I've seen so many documentaries, and I knew the story of this filmmaker, and I knew how we could present it. But now having to sort of merge it with another film, essentially, right, was very difficult. And that was very tricky, finding a balance for that and finding sort of an arc for our characters, because, even though Mark and I play ourselves, we still have this sort of dramatic arc to go through in terms of what we discover and what happens to us as a result. And we had to sort of pace ourselves, and, like we shot a particular scene, and then we had to go back and shoot two other scenes to explain why one of us was so hysterical in the following scene. And I said, well, we haven't gotten there yet. Right. So it was a very, very careful, almost working backwards. You had to sort of build the jigsaw puzzle piece by piece and make sure that the piece you're building fit the rest of the puzzle, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, and like I say, I could almost see it, it was almost two movies, because you could almost see it like one of those very melodramatic true crime made-for-TV documentaries. Do you know what I mean? You could see it done in that style. That would have been one way to present it. And then, with the mystery music and the voiceover and the whole bit. Right, oh, it has to be Robert Stack, of course. Yeah. You can't beat Robert Stack. But then, and then obviously the more sort of, like you say, Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch kind of aspect to it. But I think that what you were able to do was add something to the, so at this point, kind of done found footage thing. You were able to add stuff to it, which I think really made it pop more than other ones that I've seen. So I'm not a huge fan of the genre, to be perfectly frank, but I actually enjoyed, in terms of like Paranormal Activity and stuff like that, they were not ones that kind of shook my tree exactly. But I did really like what you guys, I was watching it closely, and I got some jumps and I got some scares from the way you guys put it together. Not only in editing, but like little things you had in the background and little things that I would tell the audience when they get to see it, look out, because there are other things going on in the frame that are really interesting, which I enjoy.
Oh, yes.
I can't tell you how glad I am to hear that, because in full disclosure, I cannot stand the found footage genre. I really cannot. And also, horror is not my genre. So when it came to the editing process, Chris really had to hold my hand. But I tell you, what really hooked me was while we were shooting, I've been continuing to go back to school in order to pursue my doctorate, which hopefully I'll get someday. Maybe I'll be 65 by the time I get it. But I was having a fantastic conversation about German expressionism with my professor, who basically said, that's what found footage is. They have the subjective camera. They focus on, they emphasize mise-en-scene. They use the fluid camera. It's an urban setting. It deals with crime and criminals and madness and the suspension of disbelief and, the chiaroscuro, the closed frame aspect. And I was like, oh, my God, that's fantastic. And suddenly I became sort of a fan of it
was legitimized for
yeah, at least the process of making the film became a little more exciting to me because I kept I was a bit begrudging about the whole thing. I mean, for example, the one thing that bothers Chris and I most about, or at least me, I should say, I shouldn't speak on Chris's behalf, but bothers me most about the found footage genre is why is the question, why is the camera rolling? And if that can't be justified, it takes me out of the film, and that really bothers me. And Ed Sanchez, whenever he'd watch our rough cuts, he'd say, don't worry about that. Stop trying to explain why the camera is on, but I just couldn't let it go. And I think that actually has helped hold the hand of our audience through the film. They never feel like they're watching something because we're forcing them to or because we're trying to manipulate them to. They're watching it as it unfolds, almost as if it was, third-person perspective when it's actually first-person.
Yeah, that was actually a big help that Mark insisted. There was no shot where the camera is rolling for no reason. Even if it's something like, oops, the camera is rolling, there's got to be a reason that the camera is rolling.
Yeah.
Because if you watch something, Mark and I went to see Paranormal Activity 2 in the theater, and there's this conversation where she says, you remember what happened to Mom? And Mom was, saw this ghost or whatever. They're having this sort of deep conversation. I'm thinking, okay, your sister's pointing a camera at her face. Why is she telling her this right. deep memory of their family while she's watching her rolling this game? I mean, okay, do you know that she's filming? Why is she telling you that?
Yeah.
But nobody else seemed to care. I mean, the audience was full of teenagers. None of them said, how come you're filming? But again, it was a nice rule for us to have to maintain for ourselves and to not break that rule. Okay, why is the camera on right now?
Right.
And every now and then you'd catch me saying, like, are you rolling? You should be filming this. Yes, I'm filming.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not supposed to be filming, so we catch something because, somebody screwed with the camera settings. I can't fix it, but we have to roll camera to make it work,
Yeah. No, I never felt that because, like you say, you had this, the documentary thing, but you also had this idea that you guys were on a mystery hunt and you were hunting something and looking something up and you were trying to capture everything. It felt like the found footage bits were actually just outtakes from the bigger documentary you were making, because with obviously documentary you shoot thousands of reels of film and then you cut it down to 90 minutes, but you shoot all that film, the idea of getting it. So I felt like we were just being shown footage you had shot for the documentary that just hadn't been put together yet. And what was really nice was that you were able to, there was one bit that was really great, there was a real meta bit, I guess, but you created a jump scare within a cut that was really well done. And I think it went from a very silent moment to then you guys running through the house or something like that. And so you got the jump scare, you got the feet on wood, running through the house and shouting and so on, but you got it through a cut rather than through anything actually scary happen. I thought that was very well done.
Timing is everything.
Oh yeah, no, completely. And I think I agree with you. And I think that found footage is also so much harder to do if you're doing something fantastical, like a ghost or like a haunting or like a possession or something like that. It sort of becomes ridiculous because you're, like you say, why are you filming this bit and what's going on here? Also, somewhere along the line, found footage became something where, it doesn't matter, it's a found footage film, so we don't need a tripod and we don't need lights and we don't need a proper sound recorder and all the rest of it. And that's what it came down. It came to cheap filmmaking rather than in your film and in others, Cannibal Holocaust and Blair Witch to some extent, some other ones, where The Last Broadcast is another one that comes to mind, where the actual found footage thing is actually part of the story. Then I think it's completely justified. But when it's just, we're going to shoot this lazily because we can't be bothered and we need to make a buck. That's when I get annoyed. Yeah.
Right. And that's done all too often today. Mm-hmm. And actually, one of the key components that Ed really sort of illuminated us with was, he said, don't be afraid to let the camera linger. Don't be afraid to let it roll. Mark in particular, because he hates the genre of found footage, and I understand completely why, because in the wrong hands, it's like you said, a lazy man's filmmaking. But in the right context, it can be extremely chilling and terrifying, because if something frightening, you hear a frightening noise, and then suddenly somebody drops the camera. And then you're staring at grass for the next 15 seconds while somebody runs off and you hear screaming in the distance. That's really scary, Yeah. As opposed to, the camera running, and then you see somebody bloody on the ground, and it's forced. So it can be used effectively if you follow the rules that you set for yourself.
Oh, yeah. It's all got to work within whatever you're presenting the film as. And I think that's often, and it's not just with the found footage genre, it's almost with everything these days. It's with character, it's with script writing, it's with everything. People forget why things are the way they are, if that makes any sense, or why things fit the way they fit. Anyway, I don't want to go off on one, but one of the ones I did love was Ricche. I thought the original Spanish Ricche was really, really very well done.
Yeah, I'm dying to see that. I still haven't seen the original. And I haven't seen the remake either. Was it Quarantine? Is that the remake?
Yeah, I've only seen the remake sequel, because Quarantine 2, they don't follow Rec 2 at all. See, Rec 1 and Rec 2 completely follow on from each other, and then Rec 3 is a whole other thing. Although it has a really good idea at its core, is a whole other thing. But Quarantine 1, which follows Rec very closely, but then Quarantine right down to having almost identical shots. But then Quarantine 2 is completely different. It's set in an airport. It's completely different. So I've seen Quarantine 2. I've not seen all of Quarantine.
That's kind of like Ringu versus The Ring.
Sure. Yeah. No. Completely. Yeah. That's exactly what it's like. So, guys. So now that the film is done, it's great. It's enjoyable. What's now? What's now the plan with the movie, and where do we go from here?
Well, we finished our festival run in the fall, and that was we sort of were working against the burning the midnight oil to make sure that the final cut was ready for that, and effectively so, because we walked away with 3 awards. We won Best Direction in Atlanta at HorrorQuest, and in Philadelphia at the Terror Film Festival we walked away with Audience Favorite and Best Editing.
Oh, congratulations!
So, yeah, thank you so much. And so now it's just a matter of from that, building the fan base. And so we're actually we have 2 screenings coming up. One is going to be in Atlantic City on the 14th of Saturday, the 14th of June. So it's about 2 weeks from now, I guess.
Nice.
And we're going to be at the at a convention, which is going to be at the Tropicana. We have an afternoon showing.
Tropicana Casino on the boardwalk. It's called a convention called Bizarre AC, which should be a lot of fun.
Nice.
And
yes, I just found out about that one on Facebook. Yes, I know that one. Yeah.
Are you in the New York area?
I am. Yeah, I'm in New York. I'm in the Bronx currently, but I'm in New York.
Hopefully, we get to see you at one of these screenings.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm planning to come down. It's at the Anthology Archives, right? It's the next one.
Yes. Our other screening is on June 15th, Father's Day, at 3:00 at the Film Anthology Archives, and you can find all the information about that on our website, which is mortalremainsmovie.com, and just click on the tab that says New York Screening, and it'll have the address and all of the timing and all the information that you'll need. Tickets are only $10, and we'd love to see everybody there. Anybody who can make it, we'd love to get some feedback, and hopefully afterwards we'll be able to do a quick 10 or 15-minute talk back with the audience and get some feedback, much like what you're providing, John. And we can't thank you enough for the you know what I mean, for the props and kudos, man. Thank you.
No worries, guys. No worries. I really enjoyed it. I've got the detailed information, because I think one of you guys emailed it to me for the New York screening. So that will definitely go up on our website as well when this episode drops on Monday. If you want to send me the details of Atlantic City, and any other things you have going on, I can put up a blog post with them as well. I've got the written blog and I've got the podcast page, so I can put them up on both those.
Yeah, I have a flyer for each screening. I can send them both to you if you like. Yeah,
no, do that, and then I'll pepper Facebook with it over the week in the lead up to the episode, of course, and then and we'll go from there. I know a few people in New York who might be interested. In fact, a couple who might be definitely interested who hold a horror thing every year. So I'll hopefully try and get a crowd down if I can. If not, I'll definitely try and be there as much as I can. So I'll come down on the 15th. If nothing's going on. I don't think anything's going on the 15th. So yes, I should come down and say hello, guys. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're looking forward to meeting you.
But yeah, no, I've got a few people I can bring along, so I'll mention it. I'll get it out there, guys. It needs to be seen. And has your friend at Sony seen the movie yet, or?
He has. Unfortunately, like I had mentioned before, what Hollywood's interested now in doing is sort of aggregation. They collect all of these. They pay pittance for all of these. For all this product, all these DVDs that they acquire, and then they sort of aggregate them together. They sell them as a bulk package to on Verizon On Demand or Comcast On Demand.
Sure.
So they make a bundle, and the filmmakers walks away with a pittance. So he pretty much said, "Look, I can tell you the kind of deal that you're going to get, and it's probably not going to be as enticing as you want." And we've had some other interested in folks approach us, and as a matter of fact, thanks to the promotion that we've been doing on the podcast and so forth, we ended up getting a company to fully sponsor the New York screening. A company called Turmoil.
Nice.
They're jazzed by the film, and God bless them, and so we're just going to keep our fingers crossed that hopefully if we can do enough screenings in enough locations such as New York or Los Angeles, hopefully we can get some buzz going and some interest, and that's where it all starts. So
and there are still some DVD. In fact, they crop up all the time. Little DVD companies and distribution companies who are cropping up all over the place. I know, like I say, a lot of the Baltimore indie filmmakers, and they can more or less turn their movies to DVD and streaming and various other for-profit outlets that they seem to do pretty well at. And there seems to be a really nice, thriving East Coast filmmaking community, which is great. And even in Pittsburgh, I know my friend Tim Gross out there, who's putting together he did Jagoff Massacre, and he's doing a sequel to that as well. Jagoff Massacre, yeah. That's
great.
So there's a whole bunch that I know around the area. So I'll put it out there, and we'll see what happens.
Please do.
Wish you guys all the best, guys. Well, look, thanks ever so much. Was there anything else you wanted to say? Anything else you wanted to promote? Anything else you wanted to put out there?
Actually, Chris, go ahead and push our Facebook and Twitter accounts, just in case anybody's interested.
Well, you can certainly follow Cryptic Pictures. That's our production company, and we have crypticpictures.com, of course, Facebook.com/Cryptic Pictures. That's our Facebook page. You can join us there. Of course, there's Immortal Remains Facebook page, and also on Twitter we have @Cryptic Pictures, and @Carl Atticus is the movie on Twitter, so you can follow both of those. And there is actually a Carl Atticus page on Facebook too, where you can like Carl and learn some more details about the legend, which you can also do at carlatticus.com if you're so inclined. And there's lots of little bits and pieces out there. If you keep digging, you may find a bone or two. That's kind of how we look at it.
Yeah, I like that, because you've got the online kind of mystery going on. Similarly, in fact, to what the Blair Witch did when they first came out, obviously in a different way. But what I liked about it was that the mystery then feeds into the film's mystery. That it kind of all ties in together, which I liked a lot. So that's very cool.
Great.
All right.
Yeah,
John, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, no, it was good chatting to you guys. Thanks ever so much. And like I say, this should go up either late Monday or early Tuesday next week. So in plenty of time, almost a week in time before your film screenings. Hopefully we'll rally some East Coasters and get them to Atlantic City or New York for you.
Yeah, let us know. We'll tweet the hell out of it.
All right, guys. Well, look, thanks ever so much for your time, and have a good rest of the night and a good rest of the week.
You too.
Thank you, John. Likewise.
All right, take care. Bye now. everybody, it's the Pops at the Top's Top 10 Rundown with me, Graham Plaidbulge, and Donald Spaniel.
Hi, it's me, Donald Spaniel.
Isn't he marvellous, ladies and children, cats and matchbox dinosaurs? Now, let's get to this very tense and exciting Top 10 Rundown. Here are the songs that you, the listening public, deem to be the very least terrible in a sea of inadequate bilge. Would you like to start it off, Donald?
Well, yeah, I would. But my wife says, get this, I'm a massive failure in bed.
I don't think that's the band's name, Donald.
Doesn't matter to me, mate. All the songs sound the same when every day you're waking up crying in the back of your Ford Fiesta, eating ice cream and wishing that your life would end.
Okay, Donald. Wonderful. Well, he's really in the musical spirit. Well, don't forget, you're listening to the Pops at the Top's Top 10 Rundown. And at number 10, it's I've Tried to Lock You in the Bathroom, But You Keep Finding the Air Duct Lanolin by the Pink Doctors. A surprise entry there. I especially love the use of balalaika in the third verse. What did you think, Donald?
Well, I thought it reminded me of the dark-spiraling misery that I felt when my wife left me for my best friend.
That was in the song, Donald? Sure. Maybe that bit in the song about baby, why'd you break my heart? All I wanted was a damn sandwich.
Well, it was certainly something I was screaming.
Okay. And next, at number 9, it's the Reinhold Mouse Fidgets with Why'd You Have to Go to Lunch with the One That Got Away. One of my favourites, sure. And one of yours too, I believe, Don.
I did enjoy that one, actually. That was quite a good song. I think it should be number 1. But what do I know? Because clearly I can't get any decisions right, and that's why I've got a failing marriage.
And that leads us on, very succinctly, to number 8 with All Day Long, All I Do Is Polish Bricks by Lanold, Poltroid and Friend. Such a beautiful song, so many emotions. It makes me feel a million things and nothing at all at once.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because listening to the song, I got nothing. I didn't feel anything. Just like I don't feel anything when I cut myself.
Well, there are more songs, obviously. We've only done a handful, but unfortunately I am being told we're going to have to cut this episode short with some news thing or sporting event or something coming up. So
I'm going to have to stop you here. Please, don't leave me alone tonight. I might do something crazy.
Oh, don't pay any mind to Donald. He's absolutely...
No, seriously, please, don't leave me alone. Every day, I wake up screaming.
Donald, please, seriously, I just want to finish the show and then we'll talk off air.
You're not going to get in the back of my
please stop it. Donald, get off my sleeve.
No, just listen, smell my chloroform hammer.
And I'd just like to point out that the guy who's been doing the sketches with me this week, Chris Jones, now has a show of his own called Panic Stations UK, available on TalkShoe and iTunes. It's a fantastic show. It's all about mental health. It's a serious show, not a comedy show. It's a serious show about people sharing their problems, and it's a place for people to kind of open up and speak freely, and hopefully it'll do a lot of good and help a lot of people when they listen to it. Anyone who's suffering emotionally or mentally, then it would be a great show for you to listen to. Also just a good show just to find out about what your fellow humans go through sometimes and how difficult it can be for some people. Show a bit of empathy, and also just good to learn about other people. So yeah, please do check out Panic Stations UK over at TalkShoe or iTunes, hosted by the wonderful Chris Jones. And I'd like to say a wonderful Robert Zadar Day to you, sir, or a Zadar Day to you.
Yeah, for sure. I meant to comment on all those posts you made. I just kept forgetting about it.
Yeah, it's the greatest day of the greatest chin ever seen in movie history. I know Campbell gets called the Chin, and I know some other actors have fairly prominent jaws, but come on, Zadar, he's the master of the chin. There is no one better, surely.
He got a big one, yeah.
Yeah, he's got some His looks like it was broken in 17 places and then reset using some form of tire as the kind of model for it. But yeah, so happy Zadar day to everyone listening.
Yeah, for sure. You too, man.
Obviously, this will be going out a week from now, so the glory of Robert Zadar Day will be far behind us. But for the moment, there was a brief glimmering time in the world when chins everywhere could stand proud. And that's what I like about days like today, man. That's what I like about it. But okay, so hello and welcome back to yet another episode of the After Movie Diner. And we are absolutely thrilled, palpitating even, to have our following guest on the show. He's been a long time podcasting brother. He's been doing his own show at Cinema Beef Podcast, which he's just added to with the Beard and the Bird show, which we're going to get into in a minute, find out all about that. But he's a fantastic fella. Had a chance to be on his show recently, covering some classic Walter Hill joints, and now he joins me here in the diner. Will we all please put our limbs together in repetitive motion and make some form of flapping noise for none other than Monsignor Gary Hill? Hello, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you, John?
I am fantastic, sir. I am fantastic. As I was saying before we started the show, it is hot and humid here in our New York City this evening, so apologies to anyone listening. But there is a fan running behind me because, by Christ, there's no way I could be doing this show without a fan running. I would die. You would hear me just melt. Or you would be talking, Gary, and on the other end you'd just hear as I slopped off the chair into a puddle and didn't live anymore. So yeah, I have a fan blowing on my back at the moment and keeping the room nice and cool. How about yourself, sir? How have you been?
I'm doing great. As staying busy, personal, business, podcasting, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. So why don't we get into it? So first of all, let's get into you, and then we'll get into the films that we're going to cover in a minute. But let's start with you, sir. So when did the podcast bug or the internet bug, I don't know if you had a blog before you did Cinema Beef, when did that first bite, sir?
No blog whatsoever. Just listen to different shows and, figured, the ego kicked in and say, I could do that too, and decided to start something up. And I wouldn't say caught on. I'm setting the world on fire or anything, but I like to talk to people about film, and that's pretty much where it comes from. I'm the guy who loves life and loves film and loves people, apparently. I love to talk to everybody, so... Yeah,
damn straight, man, damn straight. Well, you got in with the right bunch of people, I think. Like myself, that's how I feel. I feel like... more so than any kind of numbers or anything that might happen as a result of the cast. My feeling is I got in with the right group of people. You know what I mean? And we've shedded any, and there hasn't been a lot, but we've shedded kind of any dead weight that's been floating around. And we're a good group of people who like to be nice to each other, and we don't get into arguments. That's what I like about the After Movie Diner and Kick-Ass Kid group that we have running on Facebook. We have over 260 members or something like that, and there's never been a fight. There's never been a need to ban anyone or whatever, you know what I mean? And that's what I love about it. You go to some forums and you get shit just for showing up. You show up and you say you're a podcaster and immediately there's some stink on you, So yeah. That's what I like about it. So so you started off with Cinema Beef, and what was the initial plan behind that, Chief?
Well, basically, to find people who either like or dislike films. Because I feel there's audience for film for everybody.
Right.
But some folks don't like certain things. I figured,
Sure.
I would defend a movie that they don't like, basically.
Yeah, and we're going to sort of do that on this show a little bit. More of that later, though, which is going to be fun and exciting. And we're going to get into it, so mano a mano. Over a movie, which I'm going to enjoy, I think. And then, so recently you've started up is it the Bird and the Beard or the Beard and the Bird?
It's the Bird and the Beard.
Okay, so okay, and you are laying claim as the Beard, which as anyone will tell you was my thing for a long time. Although my beard is in no way as majestic or as full or as face inhabiting as your own. So, sir, why don't you tell us how that show came about and what that show's all around?
Well, I hooked up with Emily, who's the Bird, through this podcast called Terror Troop, who I became good friends with.
Sure.
And we became good friends through that. And she would come on the show, and she would always pick good movies. like something that I've never seen, but I enjoyed a lot. So I decided, to say, let's do something together. Where she would pick, something from the UK and I would pick something from the States, no matter what it is.
Yeah, sure.
And then we would do that together because she always picks good stuff. So I figured I trust her judgment to pick something to watch. But I'm sure I'll throw some real dumb American stuff at her, like that she'll probably dislike.
Sure.
It happened already.
Yeah, it did.
Yes.
Already? You're only on to the second episode, right?
Well, it happened on the second episode.
Nice. Nice.
It was totally by accident, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, but was she affronted by it? Was she kind of jokingly okay with having seen it?
Some of the themes in the film that bothered her, it was eating Raoul,
Right. Yeah.
It was the rapey vibe that it gave off for the whole movie.
Sure. Well, who doesn't love a rapey vibe?
Yeah, she doesn't like in a comedic way though. She doesn't mind rape in films, in a comedic way, like they're making fun of rape in a lot of ways.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
I know. I'm just saying that I watched it about a half an hour. And wow, she's really gonna dislike this movie.
Yeah,
she did too.
It's an interesting choice, though, man. I mean, that's an out of the box kind of suggestion. That's like a Criterion Collection deep cut right there. Eating Raoul.
Well, I'm trying to pick a lot of films that I haven't seen. I always said you could fill the Grand Canyon with films I haven't seen.
Sure.
So, like next show, we're gonna do Blackboard Jungle. I picked Blackboard Jungle because I never seen it before. So.
Sure, of course, yeah. No, I mean Mo was my a boatman across the river weird that kind of took me into a realm of movies that I hadn't seen before. I was kind of out there as having sort of eclectic, weird, cult B-movie taste amongst my friends in England, and I had some friends who also joined me on that, but I was known as the guy like weird and rare videos. Yeah, that'll be John, ask him about that. And then of course I started chatting with our boy Mo and some others, and I realized I don't know anything. I really don't know anything.
That's the great thing about this community, that they could turn you on to new things, and I've been turned on to so many new things by this community that I'm I can't tell you how grateful I am, but it warms the cockles of my heart there.
Oh, it's good times, man, most definitely. And like I say, no judgments by anyone else. There's never that kind of, oh, you haven't heard of this film, oh my God. There's none of that. It's just always a desire to share and always a desire to tell people about new stuff. And it's still going on, man. Our last episode last week was all about a movie called Swarm of the Snakehead. Now, obviously, it has the Baltimore connection, which I'm now kind of steeped in. But even so, it was a new movie for me and new cast of characters, and it's always good fun, always good fun. So what do you have coming up on Cinema Beef? And this will be going out next Monday, so bear that in mind. But what have you got coming up on Cinema Beef and The Bird and the Beard?
Well, by the time you're listening to this, then the new Cinema Beef should be coming out. It's with me, myself, of course.
Sure.
Jeffrey X. Martin, and my other podcasting partner, Willis Wheeler from Terror Troop.
Nice.
And we did The Never-Ending Story, Prince of Darkness, and Eight-Legged Freaks. 3 films that have nothing to do with each other.
Right.
And I love that mismatch shit. It just works really well because you're talking about 3 totally different films.
Sure, of course.
And it works so well. I don't know how to explain it, but...
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few of those shows. It's difficult. Sometimes it gels. Sometimes it's just like, what the hell, But no, it's all good fun. So, well, that sounds like a good mismatch, definitely. And what about Bird and the Beard?
That should be out on probably the same day or the day after.
Okay.
We did 2, I guess, teens in the wilderness kind of movies. We did Wilderness from the UK, and we did Ticks from the US from the 90s.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. That's a nice weird one. I remember when all those movies started to come out on VHS, Ticks and Frogs and all that kind of stuff. They came out on Blockbuster in the UK. Blockbuster over here was kind of known as just being new movies and stuff, but Blockbuster in the UK used to have big Batcat and sort of second tier B movie sections, and you would have whatever the monster movie of the day was, the 90s Godzilla or whatever it was, and then underneath they would have Ticks and Frogs and all those kind of movies that came out on VHS just at the last throes of VHS in the early 2000s.
Yeah. You missed those mom and pop stores, though. I don't know how many of those you had in the UK, but...
Oh, yeah, no, we had mom and pop stores. In fact, in the UK, kind of everywhere at a certain point kind of sold VHS. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, we had plenty of mom and pop stores, and I love those mom and pop stores. But I think the university town I went to was very lucky to have quite a big and expansive blockbuster, which is always useful. I mean, it was a student town, and it was also a film, like the university had a film course, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it was very good. So okay, let's get on to the movies that we're covering tonight. Now, we're not really covering direct individual movies, except one in particular. We're covering more of a group of people and their output currently. The theme, roughly, that I wanted to explore, and we can do it any which way you like, really, man, but like the theme I wanted to explore on this week's show was the idea that, and this is my own personal thesis, that when Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright do something together, it is gold. Like it's amazing. Like it just works. But that individually and by themselves, and I'm really talking kind of post-Spaced, because I know that Simon Pegg did a lot of great stuff on TV before then. But kind of post-Shaun of the Dead or post-Spaced, I think that both Pegg, Frost, and Edgar Wright have struggled when they are separated. I mean, Pegg has had a couple of successes. I mean, I just saw that one. I don't know if you've caught it yet, man, on Netflix, but is it Everything to Fear or something about fear itself or something? Have you seen that one?
I've seen it pop up, but I didn't see it yet, no.
I watched that recently. Not bad. I mean, certainly the best of his solo efforts so far, I think. A fantastic fear of everything. And actually, if you have a way to watch A Fantastic Fear of Everything, either on Netflix or something like that, I would suggest that you give it a go. There is also, he's got, what is it? The Kill Me 3 Times, Absolutely Anything, Man Up, a couple of other things coming out that show that they could be more promising things on the horizon. But as a whole, I found Paul, Run, Fat Boy, Run, How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, a lot of those ones are disappointing. And none more so, I hate to say it, because this is going to be our big bone of contention, and this is really the movie we're going to focus on, but none more so than Edgar Wright's sort of solo directorial work, which is Scott Pilgrim versus the World, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had issues with that movie. So that was the sort of thesis. I mean, we can talk about the Cornetto trilogy, because I feel like that's the best three things that any of them will do until they all work together again. Mm-hmm. But initially, sir, how do you feel about my thesis? Do you think it's completely wrong, or do you see roughly where I'm coming from?
See, I think that, I can't really place Run, Fat Boy, Run and those other films, in the same echelon as Scott Pilgrim, being worse movies. But at the same time, I can't say Run, Fat Boy, Run was a bad movie. I didn't see the other one, so I have no frame of reference.
Right.
But as far as Frost goes, I think he's good in other stuff without Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg.
Well, what have you seen him in, sir?
I saw The Boat That Rocks, and I can say that his character in that film's great.
Sure.
Without Frost and Pegg.
You think?
I mean, without Wright and Pegg.
Sure. I mean, we could include their ensemble movies. I mean, obviously there's Mission Impossibles, and there's The Boat That Rocked and things like that. I mean, I just recently saw Cuban Fury, which is Frost's kind of first solo outing as a leading man. Mm-hmm. I can't say it did anything for me at all.
Fair enough.
And Pegg's kind of comedy stuff, while it's, solo stuff like the couple of movies that I mentioned, and there are others, while they are perfectly watchable and he's absolutely fine in them, any of us who grew up in the UK either watching Spaced or watching Big Train, or even watching It Is Bill Bailey, which are the sort of three things that he was known for on TV beforehand, just feel like he is wasted in these playing average schlub roles. He can do so much more than that, as he has shown in Shaun, The World's End, and Hot Fuzz. I mean, you couldn't get three really more different characters in those three movies, right?
Yeah, that's true. I guess I can't hate movies, that they make, but I can tell. I can certainly, get your reference that they haven't been any better since they've been together.
Yeah, I mean that's how I feel now.
I never liked Space personally because I watched it. It came on Netflix and I wasn't feeling it for some reason,
Right.
So I stopped watching it.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting because obviously that was that's still almost the.
I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it, mind you.
Sure.
I'm not a guy who loves Monty Python, but I can see the comedy in it.
Right. I understand. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, there's certain stuff that I mean, I think what's really interesting about what they did with Spaced is that, this is another theory I have, is that I feel like it's kind of what Community has tried to do in America. Now, Community have done it in a far more kind of American way, but it's dealing with day-to-day problems in reference to movies. Mm-hmm. And there was always that thing, like very often in a sitcom there would be a movie parody or there would be a scene in which they would parody the film, but it was very often just to kind of hit the zeitgeist of that time for whatever reason. Whereas Spaced did it specifically to deal with the leading character's problems, which is kind of what Community does. In fact, Community does it in a far more brash, over-the-top, silly, overhanded referencing way, and then the emotion of Community is very kind of over the top as well, whereas I feel like Space was a little bit more subdued and so on. I mean, it got a bit like I always feel like the Matrix episode of Space, which you may not have got to actually because it's like the 7th or 8th episode because it's the beginning of season 2. I always felt that kind of went a bit overboard for my taste. I liked it when the parodies were kept to a minimum and it was more about what those characters were doing, but certainly a great training ground for the three. So how do you feel, before we go on to Scott Pilgrim, how do you feel about the Cornetto trilogy, the so-called Cornetto trilogy?
I like it. I think they got better with films. It's probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but The World's End was my favorite.
No, you see, as much as I like Sean and Hot Fuzz, I almost have to agree with you. I think like all the other films, actually, I think the ending falls down. I'm not sure how good Peg and Wright are at doing endings, but I think it's a problem with a lot of movies. You set up these great characters, you have all this exciting stuff happen, you have all these great jokes, the audience doesn't want it to end, and then it kind of has to end. And I certainly think The World's End probably has initially the best ending. I don't know how I feel about the bit that then comes after, the post-apocalyptic bit. But I think that certainly it's one of their strongest films.
Well, it gave you that Return of the King ending, basically. Well, this is what happened to our fearless characters, and
Yeah. I sort of found that all a bit. Yeah,
but it wasn't 15 minutes long, so you had that going for you.
No, right, and I mean, I think that you want some wrap up to that story, admittedly, but at the same time, I'm not sure how I feel about the fact that Gary is running around with sort of robot versions of his younger self, rather than. I mean, it's fine. It's the idea that he still hasn't learnt his lesson, I guess, but. Considering it's who he is that kind of gets the aliens to kind of give up and piss off at the end of World's End, I understand it, but at the same time, I think it would be nice to get a little bit of redemption for that character. I mean,
Well, it kind of was, because he asked for water. He didn't ask for a brew.
No,
at the
true,
end.
But I don't know. I had become so invested in that group of friends kind of being together that if by the end of that movie all the group of friends are more or less still alive, even in fact Martin Freeman is still around kicking about as well, I think it just would have been, I don't know whether I'm an old softie, but it would have been nicer to kind of just have them all hanging about rather than Gary off doing whatever he's doing with a bunch of younger versions of it. I mean, I understand what they were coming from, but it kind of, I don't know, it still sticks in my craw. But I agree with you when you say about The World's End being the best one. It might just be because it's the most recent one, but it's certainly the one that I'm excited about revisiting all the time.
Well, I've seen the other ones multiple times. I just got the Blu-ray set today for $17.99, so it's pretty cheap.
Sure.
But The World's End was the only one where when I went to the theater, I came out and I felt like a sense of accomplishment and say, okay, wow, it's ended, and it ended like properly.
Right.
And now if they never make another one, I'll be fine with that. You know, in that series, you know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they've already said that when they go on and do their next movie, it might not be a genre film, it might be something else. And whatever they choose to do, I'm interested in. I actually think they're best at doing those genre films, or certainly that's what they've proven best at doing. And I think that they're only getting better and better at it, and therefore it's one of the things I felt when I left The World's End, because I saw the trilogy in the cinema. They ran one of those special evenings and gave me a T-shirt and a lanyard and all that, and you go and sit and watch all 3 movies back to back. Mm-hmm. And you know, the saddest thing about leaving The World's End was, all right, okay, so I've probably got at least another 10 years, just judging by the slate of movies. And at that time, we thought Wright was going to be doing Ant-Man. You know, I just thought, oh, great, so we've got another fucking 10 years before I get to see one of these movies again. And it was great, but at the same time, it was kind of disappointing, because I was like, I really wish they would just, and this is where this idea came from, I really wish they were just making these movies. I don't really care about Peg being Scotty in Star Trek. I mean, I fucking hate the Star Treks anyway. I love the original series, which is why the new ones kind of bother me. And I don't care about him being Scotty. I find he was great in the first Mission Impossible he was in, but then became very annoying once they gave him an expanded role and he tried to suddenly be an action hero.
Give him more to do, yeah.
Which kind of bothered me, because it became too generic English comedy sidekick, annoying kind of. It just wasn't written very well. And you know, and he's doing a bunch of like kids films and voiceovers and things, and that's absolutely fine. Obviously, you've got to pay the bills and stuff. But I don't know. I'm just interested in them doing more stuff. And I mean, let's talk a little bit about Paul and the Scott Pilgrim, because they're really the two that came out in between Hot Fuzz and World's End, which really both movies really bothered me.
Oh my God, I cannot believe we're going to see Area 51.
Hi. I'm Paul. I really need your help.
I don't know, we're on quite a tight schedule.
What's the matter, Clive?
There is an alien in the kitchenette making bagels and coffee.
Did you want tea?
No, I don't want tea.
Ooh, Marmite.
What if we wake up and find him inserting a probe into our anus? They don't do that.
Anyone want one of these?
Soil, report.
I'm closing in. I can feel it. In 24 hours, he's going to wish he never set foot on planet Earth.
I want that little green prick dead ASAP.
Hi there.
There's a girl outside.
He cannot be from space. It's not possible.
Are they looking right now? I got my people primed and ready to pick me up.
So what happens if you get caught?
No! I'm going to cut out my brain.
No!
It's kind of a buzzkill. Let's lighten the mood, shall we? Clive, when did you last get laid?
The individual that you're traveling with is highly dangerous.
It's not dangerous. He's kind of rude.
Wrong! Oh, what? This is small on my planet.
A couple of times I've seen him scratch his spaceman balls. He showed me things.
She's talking about a spaceman balls.
Why are we holding hands?
So we look like a family. Hey, we're just a couple of regular guys walking down the street with a small cowboy.
We got company! Give me the alien! Get your own alien!
I can honestly say, this is the most fun I have ever had.
Wanna send into outer space.
I like this song. Stoke the fire!
Paul.
Just watch.
It's a miracle.
Why would you do that? I'm not gonna eat a dead bird, am I?
So have you seen Paul?
I've seen Paul. It's probably more times than I care to admit, because it's been on television, and
sure.
I think I had the Blu-ray one point in time because I got it cheap, and that's when I watched it originally. I got the Blu-ray for like $8 or something, and I was like, I'll give Paul a chance.
Yeah, because, I mean, all the other movies, Cuban Fury and Run, Fat Boy, Run and blah, 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 they're all sort of fairly standard British comedy movies, you know what I mean? Here's a guy you've seen on TV, he's going to, there's going to be a romantic subplot, he's going to try and run or try and dance or try and, edit a magazine or whatever it is, and along the way he's going to fuck that up royally but still win in the end. It's like those generic fucking things that Britain pumps out, and those movies can kind of been put to one side because they don't really bear debating. Whereas the interesting thing about Paul and the interesting thing about Scott Pilgrim is that it's the team divided. Paul is written and starring Pegg and Frost, and then Edgar Wright is obviously directing Scott Pilgrim. So what was your initial feeling on Paul, sir?
Paul was, you got Paul, which is basically, catering to your fanboy action. The two friends who like to go to Comic-Con and hang out. I have those friends, so I can relate,
Sure.
And, it's just it's just a big old mess of a film to me, especially because you have Seth Rogen, who some people can find very, very annoying. I don't mind him so much. Because I can watch his stuff and say, okay, it's just Seth Rogen. He's not Laurence Olivier, No,
you see, I felt that by the time Paul came out, there was a real I was even getting Seth Rogen fatigue. I'm fine with, Seth Rogen being Seth Rogen in movies. I thought This Is the End was fucking abysmal, and I won't be watching Neighbours, but...
See, I like This Is the End for a lot... We'll get that another time, but,
sure.
I'm a fan.
Sure, no, of course. I just found it a very self-indulgent movie. Anyway... That's by the by. But my problem with it was it reduced Paul, the character, to being Seth Rogen. And I know they said, but his voice has a kind of gravelly quality to it, and you don't know what age he is, and he sounds older than he is, and we wanted Paul to be like an older guy and all the rest of it. How much better would that movie be just from the get-go if you had like a Harry Dean Stanton or someone doing the voice of Paul? It would just be initially a better movie because you wouldn't be sat there going, why am I watching Seth Rogen talking out of a CGI alien again? You know what I mean? Why are there joint jokes and knob gags?
Well, the way they wrote that character, I think they had to have a jackass like Seth Rogen playing the voice because just to deliver those lines, you can't have an old-timey guy. You can't have Harry Dean Stanton delivering those lines because it's out of it. I'm not saying it's out of his range, but it's definitely out of his wheelhouse,
But I think, you see, they rewrote it or they let him improvise in order to include those jokes. And
I don't know the story behind all that. I couldn't tell you for sure.
Okay. No, when they talk about the character that they were writing initially, they were writing it as a much older guy. Now, older guys, look at someone like Peter Fonda then, if you don't want to go Harry Dean Stanton, he could pull off comments about doing drugs or being chilled out or laid back or anything like that, and he could probably even do jokes about probing and things. But a lot of what was in that movie that really bothered me was that character. And the other thing that I found that was bothersome about Paul was the fact that neither Pegg nor Frost had remembered to write either of themselves a character. They were just
they're very boring. Yes,
they were just both. You see, the reason why the three movies, Sean, Fuzz and End works is because they, as a double act, they play off each other. One is either this relatively straight guy and one of them is, the tearaway, and it's either Ed and Sean, with Frost obviously being the tearaway and Sean being the every guy, or you've got in Hot Fuzz, you've got again Nick Frost's character, whose name I'm going to forget now in the movie. But him being kind of the man-child silly one and Pegg being the serious one until they kind of join forces. And then The World's End, obviously Frost plays the serious one and Pegg is the unhinged one. But the characters in The World's End are so well drawn and have such a good kind of past history and such a good storyline and such good dialogue that in Paul I really missed that. Because, I have friends like that. I have friends, we go to con, I have friends where... we've been into movies since we were kids and so on and so forth. And I understand that, they can be funny and I can be funny and they can be, straight and I can be straight and whatever. But there are characters there, you know what I mean? I'm not just a carbon copy of my pals any more than they're just a carbon copy of me. And I felt like they fucked with the dynamic of the Frost and Pegg partnership, and they bowed to the studio's pressure and put Seth Rogen in the lead role of the alien. And I just think those were the two things that derailed that movie, because I found that the supporting characters were a lot of fun. I loved Joe Latrulio and Bill Hader as the two agents. I thought they were the best thing about the movie.
Bill Hader's great anyway. I'm not the biggest Jason Bateman fan, but I do enjoy, I did enjoy him when I was younger, and I do enjoy Arrested Development now. Mm-hmm. I didn't catch it until after it was off the air, but I do enjoy it now.
Oh yeah, no, of course, yeah. No, Bateman's great in that, but I love the two bumbling ones. They were great.
Yeah, Bill Hader's always fun.
I also felt like if they're two geeks, there wasn't enough geeky stuff in it. Like, have you seen the movie Fanboys?
Yeah, I watched that.
Yeah. Now, I'm not a Star Wars fan at all. Couldn't really care less, okay? I'm a Star Trek fan, but I'm not a Star Wars fan at all. But I love people who are fans of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I like pop culture jokes. I do. So Fanboys, I really dug. And that's a similar thing. It's a road trip across the country, blah, 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 right? It's a very similar film. But what they remembered to do in that movie was include fanboy shit. In this movie, there's a little bit at the beginning and a little bit at the end, and then there's kind of nothing in the middle. Like, if it was me and my friends, we would be, especially if we were confronted with that situation, that it wouldn't just be probe jokes. It would be more...
Yeah, you had like a lot of little stuff in there, and that was about all you saw. Like, you had to be, the one part where you got the homage, spoilers. Sigourney Weaver shows up at the end, to being the head FBI chick or whoever the hell was chasing them.
Oh no, I know that there was. I know that there were references to other films within the film. But
not much though. Like you were talking about Fanboys, Fanboys was littered with it.
Sure, but I mean, in the characters didn't talk about fanboy stuff particularly, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
And they had that one part with where they go meet the science fiction writer. That was about the high point of their fandom.
Right, and that's even a fake character. Like, he's not even an actual character, you know what I mean?
And Frost babbling about Mac and me, it's just...
Yeah, no, there's a couple of cool little bits in there. I think it was their characters and Seth Rogen that really bothered me about that movie. I think there are some strong things in that film, and I think with less studio interference and a slightly tighter... the guy who directed that movie does a good job at direction and doing the kind of Spielberg look to the movie. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't strike me from the other movies that he's done, Greg Mottola this is, as someone who's sort of... He's not a great, creator or a writer. He's a fine visualist, and he knows how to kind of sell a joke but also make something look beautiful or whatever. But it's not like when they work with Edgar Wright, who is very clearly the very strong third part of that team. You feel like Pegg and Frost are in the driving seat of this one, and because they wanted to make it with a studio budget, and because they wanted to make it with the people they wanted to make it with, they kind of... It just feels to me like no one's in control of the movie. Do you know what I mean? As much as they need to be.
I think it's because they mesh so well together, right, Pegg and Frost, that something was missing from Paul. Him not being the director was something was missing from that movie, and I think that made a big difference in what you got. And like you're talking big budget studio thing, the studio interfered when they said make Seth Rogen in that alien because, like I said, he was the it guy at the time.
Yeah,
and that's the way that's the way they wanted it. I'm sure that wasn't their first choice to be that character.
No, and I think it just would have been so much better if it was an old character actor, like an Ed Asner or someone, like just someone who was like an old character actor. I mean, you wouldn't, ideally you'd want someone like Clint Eastwood or something, but you're not really going to get that, and that's going to be difficult to get. But a Peter Fonda would have been great in that role. Peter Fonda's always playing stoned old hippies in every movie he's in. I mean, just think of him in Escape from LA. He could have played Paul perfectly, that old mad character in that movie. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I could have really seen that. So, do we both kind of agree with Paul then? Is that where we both kind of fall when it comes to that movie?
It's middle of the road. It's just not very good compared to the others.
Yeah. And I think it's got something to do with there being no clear central focus. I think it's a great idea, and I think it was a missed opportunity. And I think that it must be difficult, if I'm going to give them their due, it must be really difficult to have 3 movies like Shaun and Fuzz and World's End, which are so huge for fans and so popular and so revered, and then to say, well, look, because Edgar wants to go off and do Ant-Man, or he wants to go off and do Scott Pilgrim, and he wants to go off to do whatever he's going to do now, considering those movies have fallen through, it must be difficult for them to say, well, how do we now go ahead and, we want to keep working together, but how do we go ahead and market ourselves as something else? And I think they did a good push at it, but it feels to me like a compromised film, ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's lots of compromises for that film.
Yeah, and I just think that maybe if they'd done, if they'd taken a piece out of what they did with the Shaun, Fuzz, End trilogy and say, okay, well, look, although we have these 3 movies behind us, let's do Paul or another script as if it was our first movie. And let's do it with a smaller budget and obviously no need of CGI or something. You could always write Paul just to be a generic, just who looked like a guy, or even have a guy in a suit, or just look human, except for like some gills or something. Like you could have done, Star Trek is filled with aliens that basically are human. I mean, you could have done a ton of stuff.
Well, the setting they were going for, which is New Mexico, they're right around there. They had to They had to go for the grays. I had to agree with the look of the alien because they had to go that way. No,
I agree. I'm saying that it could have been to their benefit, maybe if they're not doing Paul, then they're doing another script, to have started the film or started their series of movies as a double act in the same way they did Shaun, with a lower budget. You know what I mean? And start again and realize that while they have cachet from those 3 movies, and while a company like Universal is going to be interested in churning out Peg and Frost stuff, especially if the fanboys stay as positive and happy towards them as they clearly have done, I think that they needed to start off with a much more lower budget and a more interesting premise, and then kind of build on that. And then if Paul was like their 3rd movie, by which point they would know kind of what they were doing, and they wouldn't have had so much interference. They could have had more control, I think.
Well, I think, initially if Paul made money and it made them money, they could essentially make the project that they want. They would have the money that way, to do basically what you want. I brought up to George Romero at a convention, in a Q&A, if somebody crowdfunded, a remake of Day of the Dead, like the script you wanted, would you make it? Because, the fan base is out there. They would throw money at him to make that film,
Right.
And he basically said that, basically that's the way it's going to be, and he's never going to do it again. But, that I think they basically, when you get a big studio film like Paul, and it was a big studio film, they marketed the hell out of it. If it would have made a ton of money, which I don't think it did, but, it had the potential to make a ton of money because they were hot, Seth Rogen was hot, But they could essentially take that money and make something independent if they wanted to.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that a better way to have gone with the studio would have been, I think, to have started small, maybe. And I thought it was marketed horribly. I thought the poster and everything was terrible. I mean, there just doesn't seem to be... I guess my movie taste, even when it comes down to goofy comedies, is something that has, like... first of all, care and attention behind it, but also like a creative voice, you know what I mean? Because say what you like about Python, but they've got a creative voice. Not everyone likes it, but it's their fucking voice, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Say what you like about Ricche Gervais, who I'm hot and cold on, but he has a creative voice. That's what he wants to do. And in fact, when you see Gervais compromised in something, or having a compromise when he does something, he's annoying and irritating and upsetting, and you don't want to look at him. But when he's doing something he genuinely believes in, it's normally pretty good. And I feel like that's why the Cornetto trilogy is going to be a tough act to follow. Now, let's move over to Scott Pilgrim then.
What's up? I'll leave you alone forever now. You know this one girl with hair like this?
Yes, that's Ramona Flowers.
She's out of your league. You know her? Tell me now.
She just moved here, got a job at Amazon.
I have to order something really cool.
Scott, are you waiting for the package you just ordered?
Maybe.
Scott Pilgrim?
Hi, I was thinking about asking you out, but then I realized how stupid that would be.
That's okay. You just need to sign for this, all right?
So do you want to go out sometime?
If I say yes, will you sign for your damn package?
So yeah, 8 o'clock? Come to this Battle of the Bands thing.
You have a band?
Yeah, we're terrible.
Mr. Pilgrim! I'm Ramona's first evil ex-boyfriend.
What? Wait, we're fighting over Ramona?
Didn't you get my email explaining the situation?
I skimmed it.
Mm-mm.
What was that all about?
If we're gonna date, you may have to defeat my 7 evil exes.
So what you're saying is we are dating?
I guess.
Does that mean we can make out?
Sure.
Scott Pilgrim! Prepare to feel the wrath of the League of Evil Exes.
Ramona dated twins.
At the same time? If you want something bad, you have to fight for it. Step up your game, Scott.
Combo!
Break out the L word.
Lesbian?
The other L word.
Lesbians?
What are you doing?
Getting a life.
You want to fight me for her? Why on earth would you want to do that?
Because I'm in love with her.
Scott Pilgrim versus the world.
Maybe next time we don't date the girl with 11 evil ex-boyfriends.
Okay.
Oh, that's not that bad.
My feeling on Scott Pilgrim is that it has almost too many creative voices. But you give us your side. Why is it you love Scott Pilgrim? What is it about Scott Pilgrim you love?
Well, I love Scott Pilgrim, and you're going to think I'm totally crazy about this kind of thing, but
dude, I make no judgments. I want you to love it.
I love Scott Pilgrim because every character in the Scott Pilgrim versus the world trumps Michael Cera in each and every way. Because they're so over the top that they make him look cooler because they're much more cooler than he is in that movie.
Right.
I mean, you got the whole idea of him falling for this girl he's never met and having to basically kill 7. Well, no, it's more than 7 people. Actually, it's 8 people because there's twins in the movie he has to kill.
Sure.
And maybe it is 7. I don't remember exactly. They just kill 7 deadly exes basically, and this idea of the video game world meeting the real world. If you're a fan of that sort of thing, the visuals really pop on screen. It's the same thing you're talking about, like Fanboys. Basically, if you watch it, and I've watched it many times, and I catch new stuff like almost every time I watch it because I could there's a point of the film where the very end, spoilers, he kills the number 7. Which is Gideon. Gideon is his name. He played by Jason Schwartzman.
Sure.
And he busts them into coins. That's the little gag of the film. They die. They turn into game coins. And there's a part in the film where my friend told me I had to watch for it because his gum drops on the floor because he swallowed his gum. He makes a point of saying, "No, you made me swallow my gum."
Right.
And then the gum drops to the floor. I never noticed it until I watched it again. That's what keeps me coming back to it, catching all the little goopy stuff, like movies like Wreck-It Ralph, which I could watch that movie 20 times and not catch everything.
Right. So it's the references and it's the characters you're a fan of.
Well, the story too. I never read the manga, but
Sure.
I listened to the commentary, and it was right. And the creator of the book, who had a lot of tutelage in the making of this film, so I think that the way that they wanted to have it, was the way it was, basically, and I give respect, right, for including him in all this, creation of the characters that he created on the big screen.
Scott Pilgrim is one of the few movies, and the only other one I can think of recent times is Man of Steel, where after about 10 minutes I wanted to leave the theatre I really, really, really didn't like it. Now, before Scott Pilgrim came out as a movie, the idea of a guy falling for, quote-unquote, his dream girl or the girl he thinks he wants to be with, and her having exes that he has to contend with, and seeing that through the video game eye, sphere, world, whatever, that, to me, I was like, that sounds awesome. That's kind of like what they did with Spaced, but with movies. And although I've never been what you would call a quote-unquote gamer, I have played every console. I'm aware of computer game cliches and mythology and all that kind of thing. So I was like down for the movie. You know what I mean? It's Edgar Wright doing what he did with Spaced. It had an okay cast. I'm not a huge Sarah fan, but I mean, it had an okay cast. It had a cast that seemed to make sense to me. It was about something that, I genuinely like stories about. I'm a big John Hughes Brat Pack fan, so I love like teenage, angsty romance movies. And I thought it had the potential to be, Breakfast Club meets Shaun of the Dead, or whatever you want, like Pretty in Pink meets Hot Fuzz, or whatever. Like, it had that potential. And while those things are in its makeup, like when you watch the movie, you're like, okay, that's basically what it is. But it has such a... It's interesting. While Paul clearly had way too much influence from the studios, this almost seems like, because the writer was on set, the comic book writer, and because the Edgar Wright is such a such trying to make his stamp as a director with his techniques and his style and his editing and his quick cuts and his sound effects and all the rest of it. He's kind of part Raimi, part his own thing, really. But it feels like there wasn't someone sitting down and saying, okay, come on, guys, we've got to rein this in and actually make a story here. And we've got to actually make characters that are worth watching. Like, to me, the style of the movie, all the little game references, the fight sequences, yada, 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 completely and utterly overpower and destroy any actual story or characters that are in there. And when the characters do get a momentary breather to appear in the movie and show themselves in the movie, they're nothing but kind of annoying, self-centered, ironic, hipster ball sacks that I want to punch in the fucking face.
And I totally understand everywhere you're coming from. So I think that's the way it was written, though. And I never liked Mike Cera because he always seems like, oh, I'm that guy, and I'm just gonna hang out here for a while and hang out on the wall and not do much of anything, and be that real meat guy. And he always plays that same character in everything.
Yeah, no,
he played that character in this movie too. But like I was saying before, in the dialogue, I can see some of it is kind of dreadful, but I think it's intentionally written that way. Just like Last Action Hero is intentionally written to be bad.
It's just, why would I want to watch a movie where my lead protagonist is someone that I want to belt around the head repeatedly with a baseball bat?
Well, but as I was saying, though, there's a lot to love. That's not Scott Pilgrim, who's the titular character in this film. But like I said, everybody else around him is a much cooler character than he will ever be. But I think Kieran Culkin's the star of this movie. Who played his roommate.
Yeah, but I think for me and my personal sensibility, you see, I wrestle with this idea of like what a hipster is and what a fanboy is and what a geek is and what a nerd is and all these things, because I know that I'm a film fan. I know that I'm a film nerd and geek, and I know that if I had the budget, I would have T-shirts of all my favorite movies and even like rare, weird, obscure movies. I would have dolls and figures and soundtracks and everything. Like, if I had the money, I would live in a fucking film museum. Like, I am a geek, right? But the people that appear in, or the people in reality that I've met who are like Scott Pilgrim and like his friends, the people who I dub hipsters, the reason why hipsters to me is a negative term is because it's wannabes. It's not people who are actually passionate about anything. In fact, the thing that drives me nuts about Scott Pilgrim is that he's not really passionate about anything. He doesn't even, like, Ramona Flowers is simply just this fucking thing that he has to fucking own, and when he gets it, he won't know what he's fucking doing with it. Like, he doesn't have a soul, he doesn't have a passion, he doesn't care about anything, he's not into anything, he just wants to slink around in tight t-shirts playing terrible music and you know, occasionally talk nonsense. None of it is rooted in anything. It's all these wannabes who have seen an album cover or heard a piece of music or tangentially watched the movie and gone, yeah, I want to do that, man, and that's going to be my thing. It's not people who actually genuinely care about anything. And I think that's where I draw the line is if you make a movie like Fanboys, even though I couldn't give a shit about Star Wars, I'm on the side of those characters because they genuinely fucking care about what it is that they're fanboys for. They're funny, interesting, different, diverse characters. Each of them are on their own mission, on their own journey, doing their own thing. And although, yes, it's very silly, very crass, very childish, very just fun, silly humor, there's a genuine heart to it. Like that, to me, that movie, Fanboys, is very close to a John Hughes type movie for my... It's like a Weird Science or something. It really has that place for me. It has some... whatever. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, though, the characters, to all of the characters... I mean, I get what you're saying about Kieran Culkin. He's very good in the movie, and it's an interesting look. He's not a swishy, flamboyant gay guy. He's like the loose, laid-back, sarcastic, seemingly heterosexual, but not gay guy. And that's possibly interesting. I don't connect with anyone. I don't care about anyone. If halfway through the movie a portal opened up and sucked them all up and that was the end of the movie, it wouldn't bother me. And I don't feel like they genuinely give a shit about anything. So I kind of sit there watching it going, yep, all the style is very clever. The little coins and the P meter and this, that and everything else. Clever, very, very clever. But nothing's hitting me on an emotional level. And it's meant to be about a guy who genuinely cares about this girl and loves her and wants to be with her, and he's having to deal with her baggage. Like, it's meant to be like a Chasing Amy type story where the leading protagonist is meant to be dealing with his baggage. And I think if someone like Kevin Smith had tackled this subject matter and then allowed Edgar Wright to kind of direct the references, the computer game references and all the rest of it might have been a better film. But it needed someone with sort of genuine heart behind it, and I didn't see that.
Yeah, I can see everything you're saying about, because the characters are written kind of crappy, because especially with the dialogue, because they have lines in the movie that, I can't stand, but I understand why they're there, because the whole film is written like that.
Right.
And, I'm looking at it right now, a signed picture of Brandon Routh on my wall from that movie, because I enjoyed the douchiness of that character so much that he would slap an Asian girl, actually knock the highlights out of her hair. Right. It was so absurd.
Yeah,
the whole idea of him being a vegan, so he has superpowers, and
that was actually my favorite scene in the movie. That was the scene that almost saved it for me. And I think it's all right if the exes are douchebags, but why is Scott a douchebag? His roommate is a douchebag. Ramona Flowers is a bit of a douchebag. Everyone in every bar they go into is fucking smackable. You've got that Audrey Plaza who I just want to go up to and shake and say, for fuck's sake, smile. Everything about it is just, I'm just like, stop. It's so... The exes should be a douchebag, but, like, why do I care? Or, actually, one of the exes should be really nice. That should be the fucking twist in it, is that one of the exes should actually be really nice. That should be another thing that should happen, because that happens in reality. But anyway.
Well, in actuality, Ramona is the cunt in the movie, because she just ditches these guys, whether it's for a day or a week, She tells the whole sad story about, what happened, and...
Right. But she's like a fucking carbon copy of Winslet's character from that other terrible film that everybody loves. Winslet and Carrie. He has his mind erased.
Spotless Mind.
Oh, God. Right. That and Scott Pilgrim, they are like the two... People say about Tarantino and Rodriguez being style over substance, and they are. But the two worst culprits of shitty editing and style over substance are fucking Spotless Mind and Scott Pilgrim, and they're almost identical fucking stories as well in terms of, like, kooky girl with coloured hair who lives a slightly, bohemian lifestyle, and the nebbish guy who wants to be with her. You know what I mean? It's like the whole fucking thing. And both movies suffer from I watched Spotless Mind, and halfway through I was like, so when's it going to be normal? Like, the whole movie was just like chop, 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 chop. And even when it was meant to be reality, there was still, like, crazy shit going on. I'm like, well, can we just get into reality? I understand there were dreams and blah, 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 blah. I mean, I'm someone who loves Gilliam, for fuck's sake, so I've got no problem, and I love David Lynch, and I've got no problem with weird fucking shit. It's not because I'm a prude or a straight or a square or whatever you want to call it. I have no problem with weird fucking shit. But it has to be a watchable fucking movie. You know what I mean? If the whole of Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me was just the dance club sequence with the strobe lights, the incomprehensible dialogue, and the rave music, you would never fucking watch the movie. Anyway.
Well, if I take a film like Scott Pilgrim and I treat it like a cartoon version of a romantic comedy...
Right.
I'm not saying I can swallow it because I really love it. Don't get me wrong.
No, of course.
Even though the dialogue is terrible... And, the characters are very vapid, like you were saying. You pretty much want to punch every character in the whole film.
Sure.
Right down to Ramona Flowers, because, she's probably the biggest culprit of the whole film. She started all this shit with these guys,
sure.
lusting after her and being pissed off because she broke up with them for stupid reasons.
Right.
And, in the end, you hate everybody, right down to Chris Evans, who, and again, another great scene. Because he's incredibly douchey, and that's what I love about this film. Everybody's incredibly douchey,
right?
But I can't help but love them all for some crazy reason.
I still say that you need a central or even periphery character that you can root for. This becomes an unpopular and unfashionable thing to say. People are always like, well, why can't you have a dickhead as the leading character? I'm like, because I'll only watch a dickhead for so long. You know what I mean? Like... There's a reason why the 90-minute movie format exists, and there's a reason why characters go through character arcs and why they have redemption and why they have whatever. Like, there has to be a core principle or thesis or focus in the center of the film. If it's just all... all over the place. It's like the difference between people talk about Wolf of Wall Street being just like Goodfellas, but it's not. Like, shit that's going on in Goodfellas is so much more intricate and interesting than anything that's going on in Wall Street. Wolf of Wall Street is like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It's just like 2 hours of fucking noise. It's just stuff. Like, none of it amounts to anything. No, I don't give a fuck about any of them. They could all burn tomorrow in a car accident. I wouldn't care.
Mm-hmm. And at least with Wolf of Wall Street, you set up a world, where this is a world of excess, and these guys have Charlie Sheen money, so they can have to write that. They think they have the right to act like douchebags, so
Right, but it didn't go anywhere. Like, the problem with Wolf of Wall Street is there wasn't a alternative. There was no comeuppance for the lead character. There was no consequences shown of his actions. He even, imbibed all those drugs and still kind of got away with it. And it's turned into this comedic scene. An incredibly very well done, excellently acted, spectacularly performed comedic scene. But also, like, with no weight to it, no meaning to it, no heart to it, no nothing to it. It was just, very funny. But, if you watch something like the British movie With Nell and I, in which the characters are almost perpetually drunk or stoned, there's a reason for it. They're trying to escape something. They're trying to, not connect with life. And there's a reason why those things are happening, and there is a relationship formed throughout. The same cannot be said for these other films, and I understand that I'm coming across going, well, every I'm trying to say that every movie needs this or needs that. I'm not really saying that, but having watched Scott Pilgrim vs. the World now like 4 times, struggled through the movie 4 times, trying desperately, because I have a friend of mine who claims this is one of the greatest movies ever made, like puts it in his top 5.
I couldn't say that,
and I've watched it in utter disbelief, going, okay, yep, the graphics are kind of clever, and I get the computer game references, okay, and I get that there's some, like, decent hipster music in it, and there's some occasionally funny lines in it, and I get that the fighting is okay, but, I mean, For example, I recently watched, I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen Dead or Alive, the computer game movie that was made with...
The fighting game?
Yeah, the fighting game movie that was made with Eric Roberts and...
Jamie Presley?
Jamie Presley, right?
Yes, I've seen it before.
Okay. So that's a movie that says to itself, right, we're just going to be a series of fights. It's like a contest movie, like Bloodsport or something.
Yep.
We're going to be a series of fights, and there's going to be like lots of little computer game references in terms of the way we film it and in terms of the way the fights begin and the way the fights end and blah, 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 blah. That's a movie that does at least the fighting aspects of Scott Pilgrim in a similar way.
Well, that's a film based on a fighting game, though, so I don't know what else you can do with it. It's except with like the Mortal Kombat film, where they basically turned it into the Dragon.
Sure,
They put Mortal Kombat characters in there, you know.
No, I agree, and I think that what I'm trying to say is because there was some, although that was completely silly, and it was a bunch of women, you know, fighting in bikinis for the pleasure of 14-year-old boys.
That's all it was for.
Of which I am quite happily and admit so. I actually thoroughly enjoyed that movie for what it was, because it was what it was. It wasn't.
It knew what it was, yes.
Right. And also, Corey Yen, who directed that movie, is fucking amazing at doing weird, interesting, different fight sequences. So I should, therefore, because Edgar Wright is very good at doing fight sequences, look at The World's End. The pub fights in that are exemplary.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So therefore, there should be something I can enjoy about Scott Pilgrim. But Scott Pilgrim, because of who made it, and because of how it's made, and because of who's in it, it unlike DOA, where you look at the front cover and you go, okay, girls in bikinis fighting, I know exactly what I'm getting here, and you don't have any expectations. There is a pretension that Scott Pilgrim is about something. There is a pretension that Scott Pilgrim is about the journey of this guy and the root of these two people being together eventually. And
I kind of disagree there, because the way they play the character in the film, he's basically a person who broke up with this girl who's now famous, who for like a year and a half had no direction, no motivation to go anywhere. He basically was a hobo living at his friend Wallace Wells' house, you know, and that's what he did. I don't even know if he had a job. He thought he was in between jobs at the time. That's what he said.
Right.
So he's like basically this hipster who...
No, I know, but I'm saying that the movie pretends to be ultimately about something. It pretends to be about Scott and Ramona's journey to be together.
No, I'm saying that from the beginning, though, he was never really about anything, which, you know, made it, you know... It's like, oh...
Right, the character turns out to be about nothing. That's what I mean. The character turns out to be vacuous and vapid and insipid and annoying and punchable. Yeah, no, completely. I'm saying that, but in the makeup of the movie, when you compare it to DOA is just about the fighting and the hot chicks, right? So you go in and you go, I want fighting and I want hot chicks. And guess what? DOA gives you fighting and hot chicks. You never sit around going, where are the hot chicks and where is the fighting? Because there's the fighting and there's the hot chicks. Scott Pilgrim, on the other hand, in the development of the books, in the ad campaign, in the central plot of the movie, is about Scott dealing with Ramona's baggage and Scott and Ramona eventually either ending up together or deciding what they want to do for the future and so on and so forth. So because it's about something, if it was just, we're going to make a movie about fighting in a computer game style with a few jokes, and it doesn't, like, there was no plot to hang it on, it might have been a more successful movie. It wouldn't have been as critically heralded or liked in any way, because I think people look at this a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes, and they love to say how wonderful it is, even when I don't really know why. But not talking about you, I'm talking about like the pretentious critics who...
Oh, I understand.
Who sung its praises, and like the guy who says it's one of the best films ever made. Because it clearly isn't. But I'm saying that it purports to be about something, but it isn't about... The end result of the movie is not about anything at all, other than... Here's something that looks a bit like a manga cartoon. Here's something that looks a bit like a computer game. Here's something that looks a bit like a pop video. Here's something... It's just... To me, anyway. But fight back, sir. Fight back. Give me the teeth and the bones and the meat of it. What am I missing?
See, I can't defend anything you're saying, because everything you're saying is true. And I can't really say, I can't say that you're wrong. But at the same time, I can't say you're wrong in the sense that I like the movie and you don't. But
right. You enjoy it. You come at it from a different place, mate.
I do enjoy it. Yes, I enjoy a lot of stupid movies.
Right.
I've seen the Garbage Pail Kids movie too many times that I can count. And that's a stupid freaking movie.
Dude, I love Howard the Duck and Masters of the Universe. I love them. Like, they are, to me, great fun movies. I sat and watched the first 4 Blood Fist movies with Don the Dragon Wilson. I have no problem with silly. No problem at all. I like silly, stupid fun. I liked DOA. I would rather put in DOA again than ever have to look at Scott Pilgrim's stupid, whiny face. But that's so. I just come at it. But by the same token, though, before people go, well, you like really stupid movies, and there's something really in depth going on here, and there's something really deep and interesting going on in Scott Pilgrim, and that's what you don't get, John. You just don't get it. For people who say that, I say, but that's not true either, because I also watch an incredible amount of like so-called highfalutin, highbrow, thoughtful, thinky art movies. So I watch everything. Every type of movie. So this idea that there is something lurking in Scott Pilgrim that I'm just not understanding is horseshit.
Well, I think it's one of those movies where, I can sit down, our friend is like, okay, we'll watch this movie. And he's like, no, tell me what you thought about it. If you think it's terrible, then that's fine. If not, I can say, hey, I still like it no matter what there's nothing you can say to make me not like this movie because...
Oh, no, I'm not trying to, dude. I'm
not talking people in general.
Sure.
To like about the film, it's I don't know. It's visually fun to me. I can watch it and not say turn my brain off, but you pretty much have to. You have to put up with a lot of stuff to watch this movie.
Sure.
Because everybody's a douchebag, in the whole movie.
But it's just one of those you think where it sounds to me like from what you're saying, and please tell me if I'm completely wrong.
I'm listening.
It sounds to me from what you're saying that you just like. You dig the style of it. You dig the computer game stuff, and you dig some of the kind of snarky humor in it.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's pretty much what I like about it. And it's a film where you know where it's going to go. Scott and Ramon are going to end up together. In the end.
Right.
But you don't know the journey, what it's going to take to get there, which is basically him getting the shit kicked out of him the whole time.
Sure.
By random cast characters who are, like I said, much more interesting than he is.
Well, I don't know about much more, but yes.
They're like cartoon. I could go watch like an episode of Tom and Jerry,
right?
And then go turn on Scott Pilgrim and realize that this is the cartoon character version of a romantic comedy.
Okay.
And I have a lot more fun with it that way. But to recognize, like, wow, this is a serious movie, and I'm going to sit down and watch a serious movie about a guy and a girl and blah 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 blah.
Right.
Because essentially the opening guy, which is a crazy Indian Bollywood fellow. He sings at everything, and he has a group of demon chicks who spit fireballs. This isn't real things. No. This can't happen in real life, so you just churn up your brain and watch it and have fun with it, in my opinion.
Right. No, and I do see it, and I do understand it from that point of view. I think personally, although I'm really glad you enjoy it from that way, I think personally... the writer of the books and Edgar Wright does think it's about more than just that. They think all that stuff is cool, but they think all that stuff is in there as a nod to the fans and the people who like that kind of stuff. But really, they are telling a story about. I think they think they're telling a story about something while also being irreverent and funny and referencing stuff and so on. But even if I take that away, even if I just look at it as what you're talking about, there are lots of graphics in the movie I do appreciate. There's lots of scenes in the movie that I appreciate. I find, to counterbalance that though, I find the editing utterly frustrating and utterly irritating and utterly repetitive. And it's like the reason why Spaced worked was that there was plenty of moments, and the reason why Sean and Fuzz and The World's End worked is because the whole movie is not a reference. The whole of an episode of Spaced is not a reference. it's done, in fact, in Shaun very delicately for the first kind of half of the movie. You don't really see a ton of zombies or anything until the very end. And there is a lot, there's a lot, and again, with Hot Fuzz, you don't really see a ton of action until the end of the movie. And in fact, when the action kicks in at the end of Hot Fuzz, I really wish he'd directed it better. It really bothers me the way it's directed at the end of Hot Fuzz. Because I understand he was having fun with the camera crank and different speeds and blah, trying to do a Tony Scott thing. But there's Tony Scott who knows how to do that. And then there's Edgar Wright who is trying it out. And I love that he was trying it out, but it's not as successful as if he'd just done it directly. I think by the time he gets to The World's End, where he's trying to do... See, I think the reason why The World's End is so successful is because he's trying to do... He's not trying anything out anymore. He's trying to make his own movie. I think The World's End is one of the few movies they actually believe in.
I think it's like a sense of maturity, too. Like, they've had a lot more experience now as filmmakers and actors. And that this is like, they're like, I don't want to say swan songs, they're going to do more stuff together, but their journey into adulthood, basically, because they made this one a lot more mature and a lot more straight-laced than the other two. Yeah.
Now, weirdly, my favorite characters are probably in either Shaun or Hot Fuzz. But The World's End has something to do with the quality of filmmaking has stepped up so much, I think. And that's where I think it's successful. And I think my problem with Scott Pilgrim is, in fact, my opposite problem with Paul, is that I love the way Paul looks. I love the way Paul is filmed, and I love the way Paul is edited. I hate almost everything else about Paul.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Whereas Scott Pilgrim versus the World... I like, the people in it, and I like the music to some extent. I like the references to some extent, but I hate the fucking way it's filmed, and I hate the fucking way it's written. I just can't abide it.
Yeah, I can take a movie like Scott Pilgrim and watch it and then say, wow, these guys really love video games.
Sure.
Just like I watched a movie, I think it was Robot Wars, I think. Right. I was watching on Full Moon Streaming, which is a great service. Get that thing, man. This one had Bill Moseley in it.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
There's a part like towards the end where you find out that Bill Moseley was like a company android.
Yeah.
So it's like part alien. Like, wow, this guy really loved Alien, and then it took a switch where the chip in his brain malfunctioned. He became the Terminator. Like, wow, this guy really loved the Terminator. So if you want to watch a good movie where Bill Moseley's the Terminator, you can watch that movie because he's pretty good at it. And
nice.
That's probably the best part about that whole film is the last 40 minutes.
Sure, of course. Yeah, no, I mean, I think also the last thing I'll say on it, because we should also begin to wrap this up, but the last thing I wanted to say on Scott Pilgrim, which didn't happen with Paul at all. I think Paul, like you said, came out, fizzled, nobody gave a shit, and it was on DVD within 2 months, But what happened with Scott Pilgrim, which I think drives me nuts, and it happened with a ton of those movies that came out over Christmas this last year, and I fucking looked at the internet in disbelief, is that Scott Pilgrim came out and was heralded as this amazing film. I mean, even now, it gets 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and that's fucking high for IMDb. I think The Raid only gets like 7.8 or 8.1 or something, and that's like a 10 out of fucking 10 movie, The Raid, But Scott Pilgrim had an incredible critical reaction, and everyone fucking loved it. And it's one of those movies that I just kind of look at and I go, what the fuck? Like, how did anyone like this film? Not when you explain why you like it, I get it. But you're not about to sit down and write a critical thesis about why it's the greatest movie on earth. You just like the way it looks and the sly humor in it and the stuff. Like, you know what I mean? It just pushes your buttons the right way. And I get that. And like you said, like a Tom and Jerry cartoon or whatever. You're not watching it for any kind of deep reason. And I totally fucking get that. Like the way I watch DOI. Like it, exactly the way, same thing. But this movie, I heard people talking about it like it was this incredibly critically appreciated film, and it blows my mind that anyone could possibly think that.
Yeah, just like I said before, if you want to sit and watch it, sit and watch it and say, you could say, hey, I saw Scott Pilgrim. If you liked it, watch it again.
Right.
And watch it again if you want to at a later date. And just
sure.
I'm going to herald it in that way, but I'm not going to say it's the best thing I've ever seen in my life because it's not true. You know.
So why don't we then, to end, because we've been negative about 2 movies. Obviously, you're going to put Pilgrim in before you put Paul in again.
Yes.
If I'm going to put anything in again, it'll probably be Paul, but that'll be just to kind of have on in the background rather than to seriously watch ever again. So we've had a good discussion. I've enjoyed that very much. Why don't you give us then, as an example, to kind of counteract all of this, what would be, not like your top 5 or whatever, but give me a couple of movies that Gary Hill is always going to live with and always going to love.
Oh, that's rough. There's a lot of subtle layers there. And I'd love to say like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I'd probably pick Texas Chainsaw 2 over the first one. That'd probably be one of the ones because it's just wild and crazy and made by Canon, and I love that kind of stuff.
Right.
What else? There's tons. Phantasm 1 for sure.
Nice.
Because I catch new stuff when I watch that, and it took people to point out certain things to that film I didn't see before. This is hard.
Well, now, see, mentioning Phantasm is a good thing, because, I mean, I think we explored this on our Phantasm episode, but I kind of watch Phantasm as just a kind of good ride. Like, I try not to read too much into it, because I think people, like, when you read too much into those kind of films, that almost spoils them, because it can't ever possibly live up to it. Mm-hmm. In the same way that you watch Scott Pilgrim, to some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something off kilter. Probably Rope for the Hitchcock movie.
Sure.
I dig that one probably over any other Hitchcock movie. That would probably be unpopular, but I like it, you know.
No, I mean, my 2 favorites are Rear Window and Strangers on a Train, but I totally get the Rope thing. I've seen it 3 or 4 times.
There's Big Trouble in Little China.
Sure.
I always go to that, and for obvious reasons.
No, it's great. It's fantastic. But again, that's got a script you like, people in it you like, a hero. You know, I can take all the weird shit in the world as long as I've got Kurt Russell running around in a vest spouting off hilarious one-liners.
Yeah. And a Slapshot probably be the one that I go to probably a lot.
Paul Newman, you're a big hockey fan?
Yeah, I hope it never leaves Netflix for that reason, because
sure.
I love to watch it and just turn it on to go to bed to, you know.
Do you support a hockey team?
Oh, yeah, I support my Chicago Blackhawks, but they got out of the playoffs, so
All right, fair enough.
They're not dead to me. They're just out of it, so.
Sure, of course, man, of course. No, I dig that, man. I dig that. Well, look, I think that's been a good episode, man. I've enjoyed you being on the show. Thanks ever so much. Did you have any last words or anything you wanted to say or anything you wanted to pimp or anything you wanted to suggest? Tell people where they can find you.
You can find me. You can find me on the Sin and Beef Podcast. That's sinandbeefpodcast.blogspot.com. You can listen to me there with a multitude of guests. If you want to be a guest, please contact me at sinandbeefpodcast@gmail.com. I'd appreciate having any podcaster or listener who would like to come on the show and talk about film. You can find me on The Bird and the Beard with the lovely and much more talented than myself, Emily Wood. You can find that at birdtrumpsbeard.blogspot.com.
Did she come up with that name by any chance?
No, the birdandbeard.com was taken. Blogspot.com was taken. So, and she is a much better film mind than myself. So I tend to pick a lot of losers, and she picks a lot of winners. So,
okay.
The bird does trump the beard in a lot of ways.
Sure. Well, I think it's probably easier to pick British movies that an American has never seen rather than American movies that a British person has never seen, especially if that British person is into movies.
Mm-hmm. And what else? You can find me on the No Cell Commentaries. That's a wrestling pay-per-view podcast where we do commentary on a pay-per-view, and sometimes we're drunk and sometimes I fall asleep, but, you know, that's a thing, you know.
Nice.
And Sausage Fest reviews with Wildman Willis Wheeler, like I mentioned earlier. We do it sometimes. We're kind of not on hiatus, but, you know, we do it when we can, basically.
Sure.
And I always listen to Terror Troop because that's a great group of guys. And then I've been adopted by that crew to be on their very lovely international podcast. And
nice.
So that's a lot of pimping, and I apologize for that. But
no, man, you go right ahead. It's great.
I wear too many hats. I can't help these things.
Man, tell me about it. When people ask me at the end of shows I've guested on, oh, pimp your stuff. I'm like, well.
Well, what I got going on?
And now I'm also the live co-host of Drunk on VHS every Wednesday night. So, yeah, even more stuff. So, I completely appreciate it, dude. You take all the time you need. All right, man. Well, look, thanks ever so much for being on the show, man. It's been a good time. You enjoyed it?
Oh, yeah, I enjoyed myself. You know, I'm going to join the Cinema Facebook group that's out there. And
sure.
Like the Burn the Beard page, all that good stuff. And find me on Twitter at GW.
All right, man. Well, look, thanks ever so much for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure. Come back anytime you like.
Barry and Vera were a lovely pair. He had the teeth and she had the hair. The life they lead was full of flair till Barry got made redundant. They had to move out of a 2-on-2 down to a grotty little bedsit they had found. It's enough to make you curse and frown when your partner gets made redundant. But with a shotgun Barry went back to his old employer and threatened the life of each of them while kicking and screaming in the foyer. But they just laughed because they weren't there, but they were upstairs. Well, is that fair? Now Barry was arrested and thrown in clink while Vera was at home in the kitchen sink. Maybe he should have had a damn good think before he threatened the life of another. Vera visited him twice a day and they were happy in their own way. Every now and then he would say all he could think of was his mother. And at night, alone in his cell, lying there staring at the ceiling, the guards would bang on his iron bars and inquire just what he was feeling. But he didn't seem to care, except for Vera and the lovely hair. And at night, alone in his cell, lying there staring at the ceiling, the guards would bang on his iron bars and inquire just what he was feeling. But he didn't seem to care, except for Vera and the lovely hair.
There are men, and then there are second unit podcast men. The podcast you've just been listening to is part of the Second Unit Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at 2upn.blogspot.com or on Facebook under the Second Unit Podcast Network. Our fantastic list of shows include Drunk on VHS, We Came from the Basement, No Budget Nightmares, The After Movie Diner, Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid, and Bloodbaths and Boomsticks. Take one podcast into the shower. Don't be a blithering idiot, Alan. We can give you the multiple podcast cleansing system all in one place that your hair deserves. Our programming is available across all platforms, from iTunes to Podomatic, TalkShoe to Stitcher, so you have absolutely no excuse. Listen today, and a free naked person of your choice will be shipped from Thailand to your door in a matter of weeks. The Second Unit Podcast Network, bringing you the action and leaving the boring stuff to the other guys. Bloody hell. Who does a girl have to blow around here to get a decent beverage?